What happens when a fearless artist paints the truth about a powerful duke and exposes secrets that could destroy them both? Stay until the end to see how one forbidden portrait ignites a scandal that will shake 1820s London to its core. Don't forget to hit that like button and drop a comment telling us what city you're watching from. The champagne glass shattered against marble. Alara Vance didn't flinch. She stood perfectly still in the center of the Ashford Gallery's grand exhibition hall, watching amber liquid spread across white stone like blood from a wound. Around her, the cream of London society had gone silent, 200 faces frozen mid-conversation, their glittering masks of polite interest cracking to reveal something raw underneath. Shock, outrage, fear. The Duke of Blackthorn stared at her portrait of him like it had reached off the canvas and slapped him across the face. "You," he said, his voice cutting through the silence like a blade. "What the hell have you done?" Alara's fingers tightened around her sketchbook, pressing it against her chest like a shield. Her heart hammered so hard she thought everyone in the room must hear it, but she'd learned long ago not to let fear show on her face. Her father had taught her that, back when he still had a reputation worth protecting. "I painted what I saw, Your Grace." The words came out steadier than she felt. Behind her she heard Lord Ashford, the gallery owner who'd taken a chance on an unknown female painter, make a strangled sound, probably calculating how quickly he could distance himself from her before this disaster took him down too. Adrian Blackthorn moved closer. He was 32, though the papers always said he looked older, too much responsibility worn like armor since his father's death 5 years ago. Tall, dark-haired, with eyes the color of storm clouds. The kind of man who could silence a room just by entering it. Right now, those storm cloud eyes were fixed on Alara with an intensity that made her skin prickle. "What you saw," he repeated softly, dangerously. "And what exactly did you see?" She wanted to look away. Every survival instinct screamed at her to bow her head, apologize, maybe faint dramatically, like proper ladies were supposed to do in moments of crisis. Instead, she lifted her chin and met his gaze head-on. "The truth." Someone gasped. Lady Pemberton, probably. The woman had been clutching her pearls since the moment the portrait was unveiled. Alara could still see it in her peripheral vision, illuminated by gaslight, dominating the gallery's north wall. She'd painted him in his study. Not posed formally like every other aristocratic portrait in London, not drowning in symbols of wealth and power. Just him. Sitting at his desk in shirt sleeves, his jacket discarded, his carefully controlled expression slipping just enough to reveal exhaustion. Grief. The weight of a title he'd never wanted, and a family legacy built on secrets he couldn't escape. It was the most honest thing she'd ever created. It was also, apparently, career suicide. "The truth," Blackthorn said again. He was close enough now that she could smell cedar and ink on him, close enough to see the muscle ticking in his jaw. "You think you know me well enough to paint my truth, Miss Vance?" "I don't need to know you, Your Grace. I see what others miss. It's what I do." "What you do," Lord Ashford cut in, finally finding his voice, "is exactly what I warned you against. Young lady, you were commissioned to paint a formal portrait befitting His Grace's station, not this intimate." "I was commissioned to paint him," Alara interrupted, her voice sharper than she intended. Heat rushed to her cheeks. "No one specified how." "The commission," Blackthorn said quietly, "came from my mother, who is currently in Bath and knows nothing about this exhibition." His eyes hadn't left Alara's face. "You deliberately went around her to display it here. Why?" "Because your mother wanted a lie," Alara thought. "Because she sent me detailed instructions on exactly how you should look. Powerful, remote, untouchable. The perfect duke. And I couldn't do it. I couldn't paint another beautiful lie just because someone with money told me to. But she couldn't say that. Not here, not in front of half of London's elite who were hanging on every word like it was the juiciest scandal of the season, which it was. I believed," she said carefully, "that the work deserved to be seen." "Believed?" Blackthorn's laugh was cold. "How very noble of you. Tell me, Miss Vance, when you were believing so strongly in your artistic integrity, did you consider what this might do to my reputation? My family's name?" "Your reputation is built on carefully maintained illusions, Your Grace. You merely decided that your artistic vision was more important than the consequences." His voice dropped lower, forcing her to strain to hear it. Do you have any idea what you've started? Yes, she thought. I've started the end of my own career. No one will hire me after this. Lord Ashford will blacklist me. Your mother will make sure I never work in London again. But out loud, she said, if the truth is so dangerous to you, perhaps the problem isn't the portrait. The silence that followed was deafening. Lady Pemberton actually did clutch her pearls this time. Lord Ashford made a sound like a dying wail. Several young ladies fanned themselves dramatically, though whether from shock or excitement was hard to tell. Blackthorn stared at her for 3 heartbeats. 4. 5. Then he smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the kind of smile a wolf might give a rabbit who'd just kicked it in the teeth, surprised, almost impressed, and absolutely certain about how this would end. You want to talk about truth, Miss Vance? Fine. Let's discuss the truth. He turned to address the room, his voice carrying effortlessly across the stunned crowd. This portrait, for all its boldness, demonstrates remarkable technical skill. The brushwork is exceptional. The understanding of light and shadow, superior to most work I've seen this season. Alara blinked. That wasn't what she'd expected. However, Blackthorn continued, it also demonstrates a fundamental misunderstanding of its subject. I am not a man burdened by grief or worn down by responsibility, as the artist seems to believe. I am perfectly content with my position and duties. Liar, Alara thought, but she kept her mouth shut. Furthermore, he said, those storm cloud eyes sliding back to her, the portrait contains certain inaccuracies that suggest the artist worked primarily from memory and observation rather than formal sittings, which raises interesting questions about where exactly Miss Vance observed me in such intimate detail. Oh, that bastard. The implication hung in the air like poison gas. Whispers erupted across the room. Had she been in his private study? Had they been alone together? Was there more to this story than a simple artistic disagreement? Alara's face burned. Your Grace, you know perfectly well that I know that you're a talented artist with poor judgment and no sense of professional boundaries. Blackthorn's voice cut through her protests like ice. Lord Ashford, I trust you'll be more careful about whom you allow to exhibit in the future. He turned to leave. Alara didn't think. She just moved. She grabbed his arm. The gasps this time were genuine. You didn't touch a duke. Not without permission. Not in public. Especially not if you were a woman with no title, no family name worth mentioning, and currently no future in London society. Blackthorn looked down at her hand on his sleeve. When he raised his eyes to her face, there was something new there. Something that might have been curiosity if it wasn't buried under layers of aristocratic ice. Let go. There's a painting in your father's collection, Alara said quickly, her words tumbling over each other. A Caravaggio, the one in the East Wing study. It's wrong. His expression didn't change, but something shifted behind his eyes. Wrong. The composition is perfect. The technique is flawless, but it's not right. I saw it 3 months ago when your mother gave me a tour of the house. It's been bothering me ever since. She was talking too fast now, but she couldn't stop. The light source, it doesn't match Caravaggio's other work from that period. And there's a signature mark, barely visible, but it's in the wrong place. It's a forgery? His voice was very quiet. I don't know. Maybe. Or maybe it was altered, changed somehow. But Your Grace, if I'm right, if there's something wrong with that painting, it means you've let your imagination run away with you. But he didn't pull his arm free. My father's collection was authenticated by the finest experts in Europe. Then let me look at it again. Let me prove I'm wrong. Why would I do that? Because you know I'm right, she thought. I can see it in your eyes. You already suspected something was off, didn't you? That's why you reacted to my portrait the way you did. Not because I painted you vulnerable, but because I proved I can see things others miss. Because, she said aloud, if I'm right, someone deceived your father. Someone sold him a forgery or tampered with an original. And if they did it once, they could have done it again. Blackthorn finished the thought, his voice barely above a whisper. For a moment, they just stood there in the middle of Lord Ashford's gallery, surrounded by scandalized whispers and shocked stares, while something unspoken passed between them. Recognition, Alara realized. The same thing she'd captured in her portrait. He knew she was right. He'd known something was wrong for years but hadn't been able to prove it. "Your Grace," Lord Ashford ventured nervously, "should I have the portrait removed? I can arrange for it to be destroyed this very evening if—" "No." Blackthorn finally pulled his arm free from Alara's grip. "Leave it. Let people draw their own conclusions." He glanced at Alara one more time. "Miss Vance, you'll receive a summons tomorrow morning. We'll discuss your wild theories about my father's collection in private, where you can't cause any more damage." It wasn't an invitation, it was an order. Alara should have been relieved. She should have been grateful he wasn't ruining her on the spot. Instead, she felt something cold settle in her stomach. Because the way he'd said in private, and the way he was looking at her now, like she was a puzzle he needed to solve, or possibly a threat he needed to eliminate, made it very clear that this conversation was far from over. "I'll expect you at Blackthorn House at 10 o'clock, he said. "Don't be late." Then he was gone, cutting through the crowd like Moses parting the Red Sea, leaving chaos in his wake. The room erupted. Everyone started talking at once, voices rising, accusations flying, speculation running wild. Lady Pemberton announced loudly that she'd always known there was something peculiar about Miss Vance. Lord Ashford looked like he might actually faint. Several young ladies clustered together, whispering behind their fans about the delicious scandal of it all. Alara stood alone in the center of it, still clutching her sketchbook, feeling like she'd just stepped off a cliff, and was waiting to see if she'd learned to fly or if she was about to hit the ground hard enough to shatter. "Well," said a voice beside her, "that was spectacularly stupid." She turned to find Marcus Webb, her oldest friend and the only artist in London willing to associate with her after her father's disgrace. He was grinning like this was the best entertainment he'd had in months. "Not helping, Marcus." "Wasn't trying to help, just observing." He pulled her toward the gallery's side exit before someone decided to throw something more substantial than words. "Though I have to admit, grabbing a duke in public, that's bold even for you." "I didn't grab him. I touched his arm." "You grabbed him. I saw it from across the room. Half of London saw it." Marcus pushed open the door, ushering her into the cool night air. "The other half will hear about it by morning." The street was quieter than the gallery, but not by much. Carriages lined the curb, drivers waiting for their wealthy passengers. Alara could see faces at the gallery windows still watching her, always watching. She'd spent her whole life being watched. First as the daughter of Edmund Vance, respected art dealer and authentication expert, then as the daughter of Edmund Vance, accused forger and professional disgrace. Now as the mad artist who'd painted a duke's vulnerability and grabbed his arm in public like some common— "Stop spiraling," Marcus said. "I can see you doing it." "I'm not spiraling. I'm assessing the situation." "You're panicking. There's a difference." He steered her down the street, away from the gallery and the prying eyes. "What were you thinking, Ellie? That portrait. It was beautiful, but it was also professional suicide." "I know." "And confronting him about a possible forgery in his family's collection, in front of everyone?" "I know." "After your father was accused of selling forgeries himself?" "I know." The words came out sharper than she intended. She stopped walking, pressed her hands to her face. "I know it was stupid. I know I should have kept my mouth shut, but, Marcus, that Caravaggio, there's something wrong with it. I'm sure of it." "Even if you're right, what does it matter? Your father's dead. Nothing you do now will clear his name." The words hit like a physical blow. Alara dropped her hands, stared at her friend. "That's not why I— Isn't it?" Marcus's expression was gentle but unyielding. "Ellie, you've been trying to prove your father's innocence for 3 years. Every time you authenticate a painting, every time you call out a forgery, you're fighting his ghost. But he's gone. And the people who destroyed him? They're still here, still powerful, still protected. So I should just accept it? Let them win. I'm saying you should be smart about this. Blackthorn is dangerous. His family is dangerous. If there really is a forgery in his collection, and if it's connected to your father somehow—" Marcus trailed off, but the implication was clear. If she pushed this, she could end up worse than disgraced. She could end up dead. He summoned me, Alara said quietly. Tomorrow morning, Blackthorn House. Marcus went pale. Don't go. I have to. Why? Because he ordered you to? Ellie, he's a duke. He can destroy you with a word. If you walk into his house alone without witnesses, then I'll know the truth. She met her friend's eyes. About the painting. About what happened to my father. About all of it. And if the truth gets you killed, then at least I'll die knowing I was right. It was meant to sound brave. Instead, it just sounded tired. Marcus sighed, pulled her into a quick hug. You're the most stubborn person I've ever met. You know that, right? It's been mentioned. Promise me you'll be careful. Promise me that if things go wrong tomorrow, you'll run. I promise. The lie tasted bitter on her tongue. They parted at the corner, Marcus heading back to his studio in Cheapside, Alara toward the tiny rented room above a bakery that she'd called home since her father's death. The streets were darker here, narrower, the buildings pressing close like they were trying to squeeze the life out of the air itself. She was halfway to her door when she felt it. Someone was following her. Alara didn't turn around, didn't speed up. She just kept walking at the same steady pace, her hand sliding into her pocket to grip the small knife she always carried. Her father had given it to her on her 16th birthday. A woman alone needs to know how to protect herself, he'd said. The world isn't kind to those who can't fight back. He'd been right about that, at least. The footsteps behind her were soft but deliberate, getting closer. Alara's heart rate kicked up. Just a few more yards to the bakery. If she could make it to the door, if she could get inside and bar it. Miss Vance! She spun, knife out, ready to. The Duke of Blackthorn stood 3 feet away, hands raised in a gesture of peace. In the dim streetlight, his face was all shadows and sharp angles. You, Alara breathed. What are you? How did you? I followed you from the gallery. He glanced at the knife. You can put that away. I'm not here to hurt you. Then why are you here? Because we need to talk, really talk, not perform for a room full of gossips. Alara didn't lower the knife. You summoned me for tomorrow. This couldn't wait? No. Something in his voice made her pause. Miss Vance, Alara, that painting you mentioned, the Caravaggio in my father's study. What about it? Blackthorn stepped closer, close enough that she could see his expression clearly now. The careful control was gone, stripped away to reveal something she'd only glimpsed before. Fear. I had it authenticated 2 months ago, he said quietly, by 3 different experts. All of them confirmed it was genuine. But I didn't believe them. He ran a hand through his hair, destroying its careful styling. I've been staring at that painting for 5 years, ever since my father died. Something about it has always felt wrong. The way he looked at it, the way he kept it locked in his private study instead of displayed in the gallery, the way my mother refused to talk about where he'd acquired it. Alara's mind raced. When did he buy it? I don't know. That's part of the problem. There's no purchase record, no authentication documents, nothing in his ledgers about it at all. That's impossible. A Caravaggio is worth, I know what it's worth. Blackthorn's voice was rough, which is why its absence from any official records terrifies me. They stared at each other in the darkness. Around them, London hummed with distant noise, carriage wheels on cobblestones, dogs barking, the Thames breathing its eternal fog across the city. Your father, Blackthorn said finally. Edmund Vance. He was an authentication expert, one of the best in Europe before he was accused of selling forgeries and driven to suicide? Alara's voice came out flat. Yes, that was my father. The accusations against him, were they true? No. You sound very certain. I am certain. My father was many things, difficult, obsessive, more concerned with art than people, but he was honest. He would never have sold a forgery, not for any price. Blackthorn was quiet for a long moment. Then, what if I told you I might be able to prove that? Alara's breath caught. What? My father died 5 years ago. Your father died 3 years ago. But the accusations against your father, they started 4 years ago. right around the time my father brought that Caravaggio home. You think they're connected? I think, Blackthorne said carefully, that someone went to great lengths to destroy your father's reputation precisely when he might have been most dangerous to them. And I think that same someone might have sold my father a forgery, or convinced him to hide a real Caravaggio for reasons I don't understand yet. Alara's hand finally lowered, the knife hanging forgotten at her side. Why are you telling me this? Because you see things others miss. You said so yourself. His eyes met hers, and there was that recognition again, that uncomfortable intimacy of two people who understood each other without wanting to. And because if we're going to uncover the truth about that painting, I need someone who can't be bought or intimidated, someone with nothing left to lose. Someone desperate, you mean? Someone brave, he corrected her gently. Tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock. We'll examine the painting together, properly. And if you're right, if there's evidence of forgery or alteration, then we follow it wherever it leads. Even if it leads somewhere you don't want to go, even then. It was a promise. Or maybe a threat. Alara couldn't quite tell which. And if I'm wrong, she asked, if the painting is genuine and I've dragged you into this for nothing, then I'll make sure you're quietly ruined instead of loudly destroyed. The corner of his mouth twitched. Consider it mercy. He turned to leave, his footsteps echoing off the narrow street walls. Your Grace? He paused, looked back. The portrait, Alara said, the one I painted. You said it misunderstood you, that you're perfectly content with your position. Yes. That was a lie. Blackthorne smiled, really smiled, for the first time that night. It made him look younger, almost human. Yes, he said. It was. Then he was gone, swallowed by London's darkness, leaving Alara alone with her knife and her questions and the terrifying certainty that tomorrow morning her life was going to change in ways she couldn't predict. She looked up at her tiny window above the bakery. Inside was everything she owned, a narrow bed, a trunk of clothes, her father's old easel and brushes. Not much to show for 24 years of life. Not much to lose either, which, as the Duke had pointed out, made her exactly the kind of desperate, brave, stupid person you needed when you were about to go to war with the truth. Alara locked her door, lit a single candle, and sat down at her father's old desk. She pulled out a piece of paper and began to write down everything she remembered about the Caravaggio, the way the light hit the canvas, the signature mark that was almost invisible unless you knew where to look, the feeling in her gut that had screamed wrong, wrong, wrong from the moment she first saw it. Her father had taught her to trust that feeling. Art speaks, he used to say, but you have to learn its language, and once you do, you'll hear things others can't. She was hearing it now, and tomorrow, one way or another, she was going to make someone listen. Outside her window, London slept, unaware that a minor scandal at Lord Ashford's gallery had just lit a fuse that would burn its way through drawing rooms and private studies, through family secrets and carefully maintained lies, until it finally reached the powder keg of truth, buried at the heart of it all. The portrait had been just the beginning. The real painting, the one that mattered, hadn't even been unveiled yet. But it would be. Soon. Alara didn't sleep. She spent the night staring at her notes, cross-referencing every detail she could remember about the Caravaggio against the few books on Italian masters she'd managed to keep after her father's estate was liquidated. By the time dawn broke gray and cold over London, her eyes burned and her hand cramped from writing, but she had something. Not proof, not yet, but a theory solid enough to present without sounding completely insane. The bakery below her room smelled like fresh bread and burnt sugar. Mrs. Donnelly, the owner, was already shouting at her apprentice about proper kneading technique. Normal sounds. A normal morning. Alara pulled on her best dress, dark blue wool, only 2 years out of fashion, and tried to tame her hair into something respectable. Her hands shook as she pinned it up. Fear or excitement, she couldn't tell anymore. Maybe both. At 9:15, she left her room and started walking toward Mayfair. The streets transformed as she moved west. Narrow alleys gave way to broad avenues. Soot-stained buildings became pristine white townhouses. Even the air felt different here, cleaner, thinner, like poverty was something you could scrub away with enough money and privilege. Blackthorn House rose at the end of Berkeley Square like a monument to old power. 4 stories of pale stone, windows that caught the morning light and threw it back like shields, the kind of place that made you feel small just looking at it. Alara climbed the front steps at exactly 10 o'clock. The door opened before she could knock. A butler, elderly, impeccably dressed, with the kind of face that had forgotten how to smile decades ago, looked her up and down with obvious disapproval. "Miss Vance, I presume?" "Yes, His Grace is expecting me." "So I have been informed." He stepped aside with visible reluctance. "Follow me, and do try not to touch anything." The entrance hall was all marble and gold, paintings lining the walls in gilded frames. Alara recognized a Gainsborough, 2 Reynoldses, what might be an early Turner, each one worth more than she'd earn in a lifetime. The butler led her through a maze of corridors, past drawing rooms and parlors, until they reached a heavy oak door at the back of the house. "His Grace's private study," the butler announced, then knocked once and opened the door without waiting for a response. Adrian Blackthorn stood by the window, still as stone, silhouetted against the morning light. He didn't turn when she entered. "That will be all, Harrison." "Your Grace, I must protest. Leaving you alone with an unmarried woman of questionable—" "I said that will be all." The butler's mouth pressed into a thin line, but he bowed and retreated, closing the door with a soft click that sounded too much like a trap snapping shut. Alara stood in the center of the study, acutely aware that she was now alone with a man who could ruin her with a word, in a house full of servants who would swear to whatever version of events he chose to tell. Blackthorn finally turned from the window. He looked different in daylight, older, more tired, like he'd slept as poorly as she had. "You came," he said. "You summoned me. I gave you an order. That's not the same as expecting you to follow it." He moved toward his desk, gesturing for her to follow. "Half of London is probably betting you'd have the sense to run. And the other half? Thinks you're too stubborn to know when you're beaten." He pulled a key from his pocket. "They're probably right." The desk was massive, dark wood, meticulously organized. He unlocked the bottom drawer and withdrew a leather folder, which he placed on the desk between them. "My father's personal papers. Everything related to his art acquisitions in the last 5 years of his life." Alara opened the folder carefully. Inside were receipts, letters, authentication documents. Her father's handwriting jumped out at her from one of the letters, making her chest tight. "He authenticated several pieces for your father," she said quietly. "Yes, up until 4 years ago." Blackthorn leaned against the desk, arms crossed. Then the correspondence stops. No explanation. Just silence. "That's when the accusations started. Against my father." "Exactly." He pulled out another document, a newspaper clipping, yellowed with age. "The Times, March 1822. Respected art dealer Edmund Vance under investigation for forgery. They never proved anything concrete, but the damage was done." Alara forced herself to read the article, even though she'd memorized it years ago. The carefully worded implications, the anonymous sources claiming her father had sold forgeries to wealthy collectors, the suggestion that his expertise couldn't be trusted. It had destroyed him slowly, like poison. "Someone orchestrated this," she said. "Someone with enough influence to plant stories in the newspapers, enough connections to whisper doubts in the right ears. Someone who needed your father discredited before he could expose something damaging." They looked at each other across the desk, the same realization dawning on both their faces. "The Caravaggio," Alara breathed. "Your father bought it right before mine was accused. What if my father saw it? What if he knew it was wrong and was going to say something?" Then he had to be silenced. Blackthorn's voice was flat. "And my father—" He stopped, jaw clenched. "Your father what?" Alara pressed. "My father was a proud man, a careful man. He would never have purchased a major work without proper authentication, which means either he was deceived so cleverly that he never suspected, or—" Blackthorn pushed away from the desk, started pacing. "Or he knew. He knew it was problematic and bought it anyway. Why would he do that? I don't know, that's what terrifies me." He stopped at a bookshelf, pulled down a leather-bound volume. Inside were sketches, architectural drawings of the house, floor plans, notes in cramped handwriting. My father kept journals, obsessively detailed records of everything. But the entries from that period, they're gone. Pages cut out. Deliberately removed. Alara's mind raced. Someone destroyed evidence. Or my father did, before he died. Blackthorn's hands tightened on the journal. He had a stroke. Very sudden. The doctor said it was stress, overwork. But what if it wasn't? What if whatever he was hiding, whatever he did, it killed him? The study felt smaller suddenly, colder. "Where's the painting?" Alara asked. "The Caravaggio. I need to see it." Blackthorn looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. "This way." He led her through another door, into a smaller room that had probably been a library once. Now it was something else. A private gallery, walls lined with paintings that made Alara's breath catch. These weren't for show. These were personal. Collected not for status, but for love of the art itself. And there, on the far wall, illuminated by carefully positioned skylights, the Caravaggio. It was smaller than she remembered, maybe 3 feet by 4, a biblical scene, Judith beheading Holofernes, violent, visceral, the kind of painting that grabbed you by the throat and didn't let go. Caravaggio's signature use of light and shadow, making the violence feel immediate, almost unbearably real. Alara moved closer, her trained eye cataloging details. The brushwork was masterful, the composition perfect, the use of chiaroscuro, the dramatic contrast of light and dark, exactly what you'd expect from the Italian master. But there, she whispered, pointing to the lower right corner. "See that signature mark?" Blackthorn leaned in. "I don't see anything." "You have to catch the light right. There, that tiny symbol, almost invisible. It's a restorer's mark. Someone worked on this painting after Caravaggio finished it. Restoration isn't unusual for a work this old." "No, but look at where it's placed." She traced the air above the canvas, not quite touching. "It's not in a damaged area. There's no reason for a restorer to work there unless they were covering something up, or adding something that wasn't originally there." Blackthorn was quiet, studying the painting with new intensity. "What would they add?" "I don't know yet, but there's another problem." She stepped back, gesturing to the whole composition. "The light source. In Caravaggio's other works from this period, around 1598 or 1599, he was experimenting with multiple light sources. Complex, layered lighting. But this is simpler, more direct, like something from earlier in his career." Meaning either this is from a different period than we thought, which would affect its value and provenance, or someone altered it to hide when it was really painted. Blackthorn's voice was grim, making it harder to trace its origin. Alara pulled out a small magnifying glass from her pocket, her father's, worn smooth from decades of use. She examined the edges of the painting, the way it sat in its frame, looking for anything else that felt wrong. "The frame is newer than the painting," she said, "maybe 50 years old at most. And these edges, they've been cut down. This used to be larger." "You're certain?" "Look at the composition. Judith's sword. See how it's cropped? In Caravaggio's other versions of this scene, you'd see more of the blade. This feels truncated, like someone removed part of the canvas and reframed it." Blackthorn swore under his breath. Why would anyone do that? To hide an inscription, or a date, or another signature mark. Alara lowered the magnifying glass, met his eyes. "Your Grace, I think this painting has been deliberately obscured. Someone went to enormous trouble to make it untraceable, which means it's either stolen or forged. Or both." She hesitated, then said what they were both thinking. "If your father knew this, if he was involved in acquiring a stolen or forged masterpiece, it would destroy your family's reputation, everything you've built since his death, everything he built before it." Blackthorn turned away from the painting, his profile sharp in the skylight. "My family's fortune comes from art, collection, authentication, sale. We've been patrons and dealers for 3 generations. If it came out that my father, that we, were involved in forgery..." He didn't finish. He didn't have to. "We need to find out where this painting came from," Alara said. "The real provenance, not whatever false documentation was created." "How? My father's records are destroyed. Your father's dead. Anyone else who might have known the truth has stayed silent for 4 years. Alara thought hard, pulling fragments of memory from the months before her father died. The tension in their house, the whispered conversations he'd cut short when she entered a room, the letter he'd burned in the fireplace, thinking she hadn't seen. My father kept a second set of records, she said slowly. Personal notes. He hid them because he didn't trust the official ledgers anymore. Said too many people had access to them. Where? I don't know. After he died, I searched everywhere. The house was sold to pay debts. I had to move quickly, take only what I could carry. Her throat tightened. I always assumed the notes were lost, burned, or thrown out. But my father was careful, methodical. He wouldn't have destroyed evidence even if he thought it might incriminate him. He'd have hidden it, somewhere safe. She looked at Blackthorn. Somewhere he thought I might eventually find it. Do you have any idea where to start looking? Alara closed her eyes, trying to remember. Her father's study, the night before he died. The way he'd held her hand, squeezed it tight. You're stronger than you know, he'd said. When the time comes, you'll understand. Look where we used to look together. She'd thought he was delirious from laudanum and grief. But what if... The gallery, she said suddenly. Not a private collection, a public gallery. My father used to take me every Sunday when I was young. Said it was important to see art in its proper context. Which gallery? The Royal Academy. He had a favorite room, Italian masters. We'd spend hours there. He'd point out details, tell me stories about the artists. Her eyes opened. He had a membership, access to the archives. What if he hid his notes there? In plain sight, where no one would think to look. Blackthorn was already moving toward the door. We need to go. Now. Your Grace, the Royal Academy is crawling with people who saw the scandal last night. If we show up together, then let them talk. He grabbed his coat from a chair. We're beyond worrying about appearances now. They made it halfway to the entrance hall before running into exactly the problem Alara had predicted. Adrian, darling, what on earth is going on? The woman standing at the top of the main staircase was perhaps 50, elegantly dressed, with the kind of bone structure that made aging look like an accomplishment rather than a defeat. Her eyes, the same storm cloud gray as Blackthorn's, swept over Alara with razor precision. The Dowager Duchess. Adrian's mother. Mother, Blackthorn said evenly, I thought you were in Bath. I was. Until I received 3 separate letters this morning informing me that my son had been publicly humiliated at Lord Ashford's gallery by some unknown artist with delusions of competence. Her voice could have cut glass. Naturally, I returned immediately. How efficient of your correspondence. Don't be flippant, Adrian. This is serious. The Dowager descended the stairs like a queen approaching a battlefield. Miss Vance, I presume? The painter responsible for last night's spectacle? Alara fought the urge to curtsy. Your Grace, I commissioned you to paint a portrait suitable for the family gallery. Instead, you created some kind of intimate character study and displayed it publicly without permission. Do you have any idea the damage you've caused? Mother, I wasn't speaking to you, Adrian. The Dowager's attention never left Alara. Well, what do you have to say for yourself? I painted the truth, Alara said quietly, as I saw it. The truth. The word dripped with contempt. You painted my son looking weak, vulnerable, like some melancholy poet instead of the Duke of Blackthorn. I painted him looking human. The silence that followed was arctic. You have remarkable nerve, the Dowager said finally. I'll give you that. Unfortunately, nerve without judgment is simply recklessness. She turned to her son. Adrian, I want this woman removed from our property immediately. And I want that portrait destroyed today. No? The Dowager's eyebrows rose. I beg your pardon? I said no. Blackthorn moved to stand beside Alara, not touching, but close enough to make his position clear. The portrait stays, and Miss Vance is here at my invitation. Your invitation? Adrian, have you lost your mind? Possibly. He smiled without humor. Miss Vance has brought to my attention certain irregularities regarding Father's art collection. We're investigating them together. The change in the Dowager was subtle, but unmistakable. A tightening around her eyes, a slight stiffness in her posture. What irregularities? The Caravaggio in Father's private study. The provenance is questionable. Nonsense. That painting was authenticated by experts who may have been mistaken or paid to lie. Blackthorn's voice was calm, but there was steel underneath. We're going to find out which. The Dowager looked between them, her expression unreadable. Then very carefully she said, "This is a dangerous path you're considering, Adrian. Your father's reputation, our family's reputation, is built on lies if that painting is forged or stolen." He met his mother's eyes. "I need to know the truth, even if it hurts." For a moment, the Dowager seemed about to argue. Then something in her face shifted. Resignation, maybe, or recognition. "You're very like him, you know," she said quietly. "Your father." He had that same stubborn conviction that truth mattered more than consequences. Her gaze slid to Alara. "It's what killed him." The words hung in the air like a curse. "Mother? What do you mean?" But the Dowager was already walking away, her spine rigid, shoulders back. "Do what you must, Adrian. But don't say I didn't warn you. Some truths are better left buried." She disappeared down the corridor, leaving them standing in the entrance hall with Harrison the butler pretending very hard not to have heard every word. "Your Grace," Alara said carefully, "what did she mean? Your father's conviction killed him?" "I don't know." But Blackthorn's face had gone pale. "He died of a stroke. The doctors were certain. There was no question of—" He stopped, swallowed hard. "No question of what?" Alara pressed. "Poison," he said finally. "My mother insisted they check. The doctors said there was no evidence, but she never quite believed them. Said his symptoms were wrong somehow. Too sudden." He looked at Alara. "I thought she was just grieving, trying to make sense of senseless death. But what if she was right?" The implication settled between them like a physical presence. "If someone killed your father to keep him quiet about the Caravaggio," Alara said slowly, "then they're still out there, still protecting that secret. And we're about to expose them." They stared at each other, the weight of what they were attempting finally becoming real. This wasn't just about clearing reputations or solving an art mystery anymore. This was about murder, conspiracy, the kind of secrets people killed to protect. "We should stop," Alara said. "This is too dangerous. If your mother is right—" "Are you stopping?" She wanted to say yes, wanted to walk out that door and disappear back into her small, safe life above the bakery. But she thought of her father's face the night before he died, the desperation in his eyes when he'd begged her to understand. "No," she admitted, "I'm not stopping." "Neither am I." Blackthorn grabbed his coat again. "The Royal Academy. Let's go." They took his carriage, an unmarked one, at Alara's insistence. Arriving together in the Blackthorn ducal coach would have created exactly the scandal they were trying to avoid. The ride through London was tense. They sat on opposite seats, not speaking, both lost in their own thoughts. Alara watched the city roll past the window, shops and houses, churches and markets, all the ordinary life happening while they chased secrets that might get them killed. "Tell me about your father," Blackthorn said suddenly. She turned from the window. "Why?" "Because I'm trusting you with mine. Seems fair." Alara hesitated, then spoke. "He was difficult. Obsessed with his work. Half the time I think he forgot he had a daughter." She smiled sadly. "But when he looked at art, really looked at it, he came alive, like nothing else in the world mattered except understanding what the artist was trying to say. He taught you to see the same way. He taught me that art tells the truth even when people lie, that if you look carefully enough, you can see what someone tried to hide." She met Blackthorn's eyes. "That's why he was dangerous. He couldn't be fooled, couldn't be bought, and someone destroyed him for it." The carriage stopped outside the Royal Academy. The building rose before them, classical and imposing, its columns like sentries guarding the treasures within. They entered separately, Alara first, then Blackthorn, 5 minutes later. Inside, the galleries were moderately busy with afternoon visitors, their footsteps echoing on marble floors. Alara led the way to the Italian master's room, her heart pounding. It had been 3 years since she'd been here. 3 years since her father's funeral, when she'd stood in this exact spot and sworn she'd never come back. Where would he hide something? Blackthorn asked quietly, coming to stand beside her. I don't know. Somewhere I'd recognize, somewhere meaningful. She walked slowly along the walls, studying each painting. A Titian, a Raphael, a smaller work by Botticelli. All beautiful, all familiar, all... She stopped. The Caravaggio on the wall was smaller than the others. A side-room study, not one of his famous large-scale works. Most visitors probably walked right past it, but Ilara's father had loved it, called it the most honest thing Caravaggio ever painted. The Penitent Magdalene, she whispered. It showed a woman sitting alone, head bowed, hands clasped. Simple, devastating. The light falling across her face like absolution or condemnation. You couldn't tell which. My father said this was about seeing yourself truly, Ilara said. No illusions, no pretense, just the raw truth of who you are. She moved closer, examining the painting's frame, the wall around it, looking for... There. A tiny notation on the wall placard, added in pencil, so faint you'd miss it unless you knew to look. LW 1822 723. What does that mean? Blackthorn asked. I don't know, but that's my father's handwriting. Ilara's hand shook as she copied the notation into her sketchbook. LW could be initials or a location, and the numbers could be a date, July 1822. The same month the accusations against him started. She looked at Blackthorn. This isn't random. He left this for me, a clue to where he hid the truth. They stood in silence, staring at the cryptic note, aware that they'd just found the first real evidence, and aware that someone had killed to keep these secrets buried. If they kept digging, they might be next. We need help, Blackthorn said finally. Someone we can trust. Someone with access to information we don't have. Who? He was quiet for a moment, then... My father had a solicitor, James Pemberton. He handled all the estate's legal matters, including art acquisitions. If anyone knows where my father's missing records might be, it's him. Can you trust him? I don't know, but we're running out of options. They left the academy separately, just as they'd entered. Ilara took a hired cab back toward Cheapside, watching the streets carefully to make sure no one followed. She'd almost convinced herself she was being paranoid when she saw him. A man in a brown coat standing across the street from the bakery, watching her window. Ilara's blood went cold. She paid the driver, got out slowly, keeping her movements casual. The man didn't move, just stood there, his face shadowed by a hat brim. She walked toward her door, fumbling for her key, every instinct screaming danger. The man started across the street. Ilara's hand found the knife in her pocket. She turned, ready to fight or run or... Miss Vance? The voice was familiar. She looked up, saw a face she recognized. Marcus. What the hell are you doing? She demanded, relief making her angry. You scared me half to death. That was the idea. Her friend grabbed her arm, pulled her into the narrow alley beside the bakery. Ellie, you need to leave London. Tonight. Now. What? Marcus, what are you talking about? I was at my studio this afternoon. 2 men came asking about you. Said they were from Lord Ashford's office, checking on your credentials after last night's disaster. His face was pale. But Ellie, they weren't from Ashford. I've met his people. These were different, dangerous. What did they want? Information. Where you live, who your friends are, what you've been working on. Marcus's grip tightened. I told them nothing, but they'll be back, and next time they might not bother asking politely. Ilara's mind raced. Someone was already watching her, someone who didn't want her and Blackthorn digging into the Caravaggio's past. I can't leave, she said. Not now. I'm close to something, Marcus, something that could clear my father's name. And get you killed! Ellie, please! No! She pulled free from his grip. You don't understand. This is bigger than just clearing father's reputation. People have died. More people will die if someone doesn't stop it. Then let someone else stop it. You're not a detective. You're not a hero. You're just what? Just a disgraced artist with nothing to lose? The words came out bitter. You're right. I'm not a hero. But I'm the only one who can see the truth in that painting, the only one who knows what to look for. Marcus stared at her, then shook his head slowly. You're not going to listen to me, are you? No. Stubborn, stupid. He pulled her into a fierce hug. Fine, but you're not doing this alone. If someone's watching you, you need someone watching your back. Marcus, I'm not arguing about this. You want to chase murderers and forgers? Fine, but I'm coming with you. He pulled back, his expression grim. Besides, someone needs to be there to say I told you so when this all goes horribly wrong. Despite everything, Ilara smiled. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. We might both be dead by next week. They went up to her room together. Marcus checked the window, the door, everywhere someone might have broken in. It's clear, he said finally, but you can't stay here. Not alone. I'll be fine. Ellie. A knock at the door made them both freeze. Ilara moved quietly to the window, looked down. A carriage stood in the street, unmarked but expensive, the kind used by people who didn't want to be identified. Another knock. Louder this time. Miss Vance? I have a message from His Grace, the Duke of Blackthorn. Marcus and Ilara exchanged glances. She nodded. He pulled open the door. A footman stood there, young and nervous, holding a sealed letter. His Grace requests your presence at Blackthorn House immediately. He says it's urgent. Ilara took the letter, broke the seal. Inside was a single line in Blackthorn's angular handwriting. We have a problem. Come now. Tell no one. She looked at Marcus. I have to go. Then I'm coming with you. Marcus, not arguing. You said it yourself. People have died. You're not walking into a duke's house alone at night with no witnesses. He was right. Ilara hated that he was right. But he was. Fine, but stay in the carriage. If something goes wrong, I'm coming in after you. They rode through the darkening streets in tense silence. The city was changing shifts, day workers heading home, night workers emerging. London's eternal transformation from respectable to dangerous. Blackthorn House looked different at night, darker, more fortress than home. The same butler, Harrison, opened the door before they could knock. Miss Vance, His Grace is waiting in the study. His disapproval was arctic. Your companion may wait in the entrance hall. Marcus squeezed her hand once, then let go. Ilara followed Harrison through the shadowed corridors, her heart beating too fast. The study door stood open. Inside, Blackthorn stood with another man, older, gray-haired, dressed in the conservative style of a professional. The solicitor, Ilara guessed. Miss Vance, Blackthorn said. His face was ashen. Thank you for coming. This is James Pemberton. He's been my family's solicitor for 20 years. Pemberton bowed slightly. Miss Vance, I understand you've been asking questions about the late Duke's art collection. Yes, the Caravaggio in particular. Then there's something you need to see. Pemberton pulled a leather document case from his coat. I've kept these for 5 years. The late Duke gave them to me 3 days before he died, with instructions that they were to be sealed and hidden unless certain circumstances arose. What circumstances? Ilara asked. If anyone ever questioned the provenance of the Caravaggio, he opened the case with shaking hands. Or if his son discovered the truth and demanded answers. He pulled out a sheaf of papers, laid them on the desk. Ilara stepped closer, her breath catching as she recognized the handwriting. Her father's. These are letters, Pemberton said quietly. Between your father and the late Duke, dated from early 1822 to just before your father's death. Ilara picked up the first letter, her hands trembling. Her father's familiar script swam before her eyes. Your Grace, it began, I write to inform you that the painting you purchased last month is not what you believe it to be. The Caravaggio is genuine in origin, but it has been deliberately altered, I believe to hide evidence of its theft from a private Italian collection in 1809. The words blurred. Ilara looked up at Blackthorn, saw her own shock reflected in his face. My father knew, he said hoarsely. He knew the painting was stolen, and he bought it anyway. Not exactly, Pemberton said. If you read further, you'll see that your father was being blackmailed. The person who sold him the Caravaggio threatened to reveal certain indiscretions. Unless your father purchased the painting and kept quiet about its true provenance. What indiscretions? Pemberton's expression was pained. Your father had a gambling problem, Your Grace. Significant debts. Debts that would have destroyed the family if they became public. The room felt like it was tilting. Alara gripped the edge of the desk, trying to process what she was hearing. So someone blackmailed my father into buying a stolen painting, Blackthorne said slowly. And when Edmund Vance discovered the truth and tried to expose it, they destroyed his reputation first, Alara finished, made sure no one would believe him if he came forward. And then they killed him, Pemberton said quietly, to ensure his silence was permanent. Who? Blackthorne's voice was barely above a whisper. Who did this? Pemberton pulled out one final document, a receipt of sale dated April 1822. The seller's signature at the bottom made Alara's blood run cold. Lady Catherine Blackthorne, Adrian's mother, the Dowager Duchess herself. Adrian stared at his mother's signature like it might rearrange itself into different letters, different words, a different truth. It didn't. No. The word came out strangled. That's impossible. My mother would never— Your Grace. Pemberton's voice was gentle but unyielding. I witnessed this transaction myself. Lady Catherine approached me privately in March of 1822. She had the Caravaggio authentication papers, forged, we now know, and she needed the sale documented but kept quiet from your father. Why would she sell it to him? They were married. Everything she owned was already— not this painting. She claimed it was part of her dowry, a family heirloom she'd kept separate from the estate. Pemberton pulled out another document. Your father paid her directly, £30,000. The number hit like a fist. Alara watched Adrian's face drain of color. 30,000, he repeated. That's— my father didn't have that kind of money liquid. He would have had to borrow. Sell assets. He mortgaged 3 properties, Pemberton confirmed. Quietly, through intermediaries. I helped arrange it. The solicitor's hands trembled as he returned the papers to their case. I thought I was protecting the family, preventing a scandal. I had no idea what I was really facilitating. Alara's mind raced through the implications. The blackmail. Lady Catherine was the one blackmailing him? I don't know about blackmail. I only handled the financial arrangements. Pemberton looked at Adrian. Your father never explained why he needed the money so urgently. He just said it was a matter of family honor, that Catherine had asked for his help with something delicate. Family honor, Adrian said bitterly, while my mother was selling him a stolen painting and destroying Edmund Vance to cover her tracks. We don't know she destroyed my father, Alara said, though the words felt hollow even as she spoke them. There could be another explanation. Could there? Adrian turned on her, and for the first time since she'd met him, his control cracked completely. My mother's signature is on that sale document. Edmund Vance started authenticating the painting, and suddenly his reputation was destroyed. My father bought it, kept it hidden in his private study, and died of a convenient stroke before he could explain any of it. What other explanation is there? Alara had no answer. The facts lined up too neatly, too damning. There's more, Pemberton said quietly. He pulled out a final letter, this one newer, the paper still crisp. This arrived at my office 3 days ago. Anonymous. No return address. Adrian took it, read aloud. Stop asking questions about the Caravaggio. Some secrets are meant to stay buried. Your father understood that, be as wise as he was. The threat was unmistakable. 3 days ago, Alara said, right after the exhibition, right after I mentioned the painting to His Grace. Someone's been watching, Pemberton confirmed, waiting to see if you'd pursue this. And now that you have— He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Adrian crumpled the letter in his fist. I need to speak with my mother. Now. Your Grace, perhaps it would be wiser to— I said now. Adrian was already moving toward the door. Miss Vance, you should leave. Go somewhere safe. This is a family matter. The hell it is. Alara followed him into the corridor. My father died because of this. I'm not walking away. You could get killed. So could you. At least I know what I'm risking. She caught his arm, forced him to look at her. Your mother might talk to you alone, but she'll lie. She's been lying for 5 years. You need someone there who can see through it, someone she can't manipulate. Adrian's jaw worked. For a moment, she thought he'd refuse. Then, fine, but you stay quiet unless I ask you to speak. This is still my family, my mess. They found the dowager in the blue drawing room working on correspondence by candlelight. She looked up when they entered, and Alara saw her register their expressions, the tension in Adrian's shoulders. Well, Lady Catherine said, setting down her pen with careful precision, I wondered how long it would take. Adrian pulled out the sale document, slammed it on her writing desk hard enough to make the inkwell jump. Explain this. The dowager studied the paper without touching it. Her face remained perfectly composed. I see James finally grew a conscience. How tedious. Mother, I'm not playing games. You sold Father a stolen Caravaggio. You helped destroy Edmund Vance's reputation to hide what you'd done. And when Father started to question it, I did what was necessary to protect this family. Lady Catherine's voice was ice. Something you're clearly too naive to understand. Protect us? You committed fraud, possibly murder. Your father died of natural causes. The doctors confirmed it. After you insisted they checked for poison, Adrian was shouting now. Alara had never heard him shout. You knew something was wrong. You suspected. I suspected many things. The dowager stood, moved to pour herself a brandy with steady hands. But suspicion isn't proof. And making accusations without proof is how reputations get destroyed. Ask Miss Vance's father about that. Alara felt her face burn. My father was innocent. Was he? Are you certain? Lady Catherine sipped her brandy, eyes sharp over the rim. Edmund Vance was brilliant, one of the finest authentication experts in Europe, but he was also proud. Stubborn, the kind of man who couldn't leave well enough alone. Because he saw the truth, because he knew that Caravaggio was what? Stolen? Altered? My dear girl, that painting is worth a fortune precisely because its provenance is murky. If it were clearly stolen, it would be worthless, untouchable. But with the right documentation, the right story, she smiled, it becomes a treasure. You forged the documentation, Adrian said. You created a false provenance. I acquired documentation. I didn't ask too many questions about where it came from. The dowager's smile didn't waver. There's a difference. Not morally. Perhaps not. But legally? Financially? She set down her glass. Adrian, darling, you're so determined to see this in black and white, good and evil, truth and lies. But the art world doesn't work that way. It never has. Alara couldn't stay quiet anymore. Where did you get the painting? Lady Catherine's gaze shifted to her, cold and appraising. That's hardly your concern. It is if my father died for it. Your father died because he couldn't keep his mouth shut, because he valued his precious integrity over survival. The dowager's voice hardened. I tried to warn him, offered him money to look the other way, offered him work, better work than he could get on his own. But no, Edmund Vance was too noble, too honest. So you destroyed him. The words came out quiet, but Alara's hands were shaking. You planted stories about him selling forgeries, turned his colleagues against him, made sure no one would ever hire him again. I made sure he couldn't destroy my family. There's a difference. And when that wasn't enough? When he kept digging? What then? The silence that followed was deafening. Lady Catherine looked at her son, then back at Alara. I think, she said carefully, that you're making some very dangerous assumptions, Miss Vance, and I think you should leave my house before you say something you'll regret. Mother, Adrian's voice was cold. Did you kill Edmund Vance? Don't be absurd. That's not an answer. It's the only answer you'll get. The dowager moved toward the bell pull. I'm calling for Harrison. Miss Vance will be escorted out. You and I will continue this conversation in private. No! Adrian stepped between her and the bell. We're done with private conversations, done with secrets. You're going to tell me everything, where you got that painting, what you did to Edmund Vance, what really happened to Father, or I'm going to the authorities myself. Lady Catherine laughed. It was a terrible sound, brittle and sharp. The authorities? And tell them what? That your mother might have purchased a painting with questionable provenance 5 years ago? That a disgraced art dealer died of natural causes 3 years ago? They'll laugh you out of Scotland Yard. Not if I give them the painting, the letters. Pemberton's testimony. James Pemberton is an old man who facilitated a legal private sale. The letters prove nothing except that Edmund Vance had suspicions he couldn't substantiate. And the painting? She shrugged. I'll simply say I was deceived, that I purchased it in good faith from a dealer who assured me it was legitimate. Who's going to contradict me? The dealer is dead. Elara felt something cold settle in her chest. What dealer? Does it matter? They're all dead now anyway. Lady Catherine said it so casually, like she was discussing the weather. Adrian went white. All. Mother, how many people? I didn't kill anyone, Adrian. Stop being dramatic. But there was something in her eyes now, something that looked almost like fear. The art world is dangerous. People who traffic in stolen masterpieces don't tend to die of old age. Who did you buy it from? Elara pressed. What was their name? I don't remember. You're lying. Prove it. Lady Catherine's smile returned, cold and triumphant. You have suspicions, theories, but no proof, no evidence that would stand up in any court. All you have is the word of a disgraced artist and some old letters that could mean anything. She was right. Elara hated that she was right, but she was. However, the Dowager continued, I'm not an unreasonable woman. I'm willing to make you both an offer. She looked at Adrian. The painting is yours anyway, part of the estate. Take it, sell it, keep it. I don't care. But stop digging into its past. Stop asking questions about your father's death. Move on. And if I don't, then I'll be forced to protect myself. And my methods of protection can be quite effective. Ask Edmund Vance. She paused. Oh, wait. You can't. Because he's dead. The threat was unmistakable. Elara saw Adrian's fists clench, saw him fighting the urge to do something they'd both regret. You're admitting it, she said. You're admitting you destroyed my father. I'm admitting nothing. I'm simply pointing out that people who threaten my family tend to meet unfortunate ends. Lady Catherine moved to the door, opened it. Now get out of my house. Both of you. Before I decide you're threatening my family too. This is my house, Adrian said. Is it? Last I checked, I'm still the Dowager Duchess. I still have rights, legal rights. And if you push me, darling, I will use every single one of them to destroy you and your little artist friend. Her smile could have frozen fire. Don't test me, Adrian. You'll lose. She swept out of the room, leaving them standing in stunned silence. Elara was the first to find her voice. We need to leave. Now, before she what? Calls the authorities? Has us arrested? Adrian laughed bitterly. She's right. We have nothing. No proof. No evidence. Just suspicions and old letters. Then we get proof. We find out where she bought that painting. We trace it back. How? Everyone involved is dead. Conveniently dead. He turned to her, and there was something desperate in his eyes. Ellie, I think we need to accept that some battles can't be won. My mother is too powerful, too protected. So we just give up? Let her get away with murder? We don't know she murdered anyone, don't we? Elara grabbed his shoulders, forced him to look at her. Your Grace, Adrian, your mother just threatened us both in her own house. She's not even pretending anymore. She knows we can't touch her. Because we can't. Not alone. Not through legal channels. Elara's mind was racing, plans forming and reforming. But there are other ways. Adrian's expression shifted. What are you suggesting? Your mother is right about one thing. We can't prove anything in court, but we don't need a court. We need public opinion, the art world. If we can show that the Caravaggio is stolen or forged, if we can prove it came from a questionable source, she was talking faster now, the idea taking shape. The scandal alone would destroy her reputation, force her to answer questions she's been avoiding. You want to go public? After what happened at the exhibition? I want to expose the truth, the way my father couldn't. Elara pulled out her sketchbook, started making notes. The Royal Academy Spring Exhibition is in 3 weeks. It's the biggest event of the season. Everyone who matters in London's art world will be there. What are you planning? I'm going to paint another portrait, but not of you this time. She met his eyes. I'm going to paint the truth about that Caravaggio. Show everyone what it really is, where it really came from. Force the questions your mother doesn't want answered. That's insane. They'll never let you exhibit it. They will if you sponsor me. You're the Duke of Blackthorn. Your family has been patrons of the Academy for 3 generations. If you request a spot for your commissioned artist, I'll be destroying my own family's reputation, everything my father built. Your father's reputation is already built on lies. At least this way, you get to control the truth. Alara grabbed his hand. Adrian, your mother is counting on you being too afraid to act, too loyal to family to risk the scandal. Prove her wrong. He stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly he nodded. If we do this, when we do this, there's no going back. My mother will retaliate. She'll use every weapon she has. I know. People could get hurt. You could get hurt. I'm already hurt. My father's already dead. The only question is whether his death meant something or whether your mother gets to win. Alara squeezed his hand. Help me make it mean something. Adrian's expression hardened. All right, we'll do it. But we do it carefully. We need more than just the painting. We need documentation. Proof we can display alongside the art. Something even my mother can't explain away. The notation at the Royal Academy, my father's clue, LW 1822-723. We never figured out what it meant. Then we figure it out, tonight. Adrian pulled her toward the door. Come on, we're going back to the Academy. They made it 3 steps before Harrison appeared in the hallway, blocking their path. His Grace the Duke is not leaving the premises, the butler said. His voice was flat, but there was something new in his eyes, something that looked like pity. Her Grace the Dowager's orders. Harrison, get out of my way. I'm sorry, Your Grace, but Her Grace has also requested that Miss Vance be detained until the morning, for her own protection, she says. Alara's hand went to her pocket, found the knife. Detained? Locked in one of the guest rooms, with guards posted. Her Grace is concerned that Miss Vance might attempt something rash. She's concerned I'll expose her, Alara said. She's buying time to destroy evidence, to make sure we can't prove anything. Adrian's face went hard. Harrison, I'm ordering you to stand aside. I serve the household, Your Grace, and as Dowager Duchess, Her Grace has authority over household matters. Harrison didn't move. Please don't make this difficult. Where's Marcus? Alara demanded. My friend who came with me. Where is he? The young gentleman has been shown to a comfortable parlor with refreshments and guards. Harrison's tone suggested that was all the information she'd be getting. Alara and Adrian exchanged glances. They were trapped. In Adrian's own house, they were prisoners. Fine, Adrian said. We'll wait until morning, but this isn't over, Harrison. I'm aware, Your Grace. The butler's expression softened slightly. For what it's worth, I hope you and Miss Vance are successful. Your father was a good man. He deserved better than what happened to him. It was the most emotion Alara had heard from the butler. Before she could respond, Harrison gestured down the corridor. This way, please. I've prepared adjoining rooms. You'll be comfortable, at least. They had no choice but to follow. The guest rooms were lavish, silk wallpaper, thick carpets, furniture worth more than Alara had earned in her lifetime. But the doors locked from the outside, and through the window she could see guards patrolling the grounds. Adrian? She knocked on the connecting door between their rooms. I'm here. His voice came through muffled. The doors locked on both sides, and I can see at least 3 men outside. Former soldiers, by the look of them. My mother doesn't do anything by half measures. Alara pressed her forehead against the door. They'd been so close to finding the truth, and now they were locked up like prisoners while Lady Catherine destroyed whatever evidence remained. There has to be a way out, she said. Even if there is, where would we go? My mother has resources, money, influence. She'll find us. Then we make sure she can't ignore us when she does. Alara's mind raced. The clue from the Academy, LW1822. What if LW isn't initials? What if it's a location? Where? I don't know. But my father wouldn't have made it impossible. He wanted me to find it, which means it's somewhere I could access, somewhere meaningful to both of us. She thought hard, running through memories of her father, the places they'd gone together, the galleries, the studios, the dealers they'd visited. The library, she said suddenly. Not a library, the library. Capital L. What library? Lockwood's. It's an archive. Private collection. My father had access through his authentication work. We used to go there together when I was young. He called it the library. Said the owner was too pretentious to call it anything else. Lockwood. Adrian's voice changed. Lawrence Winthrop Lockwood? You know him? He's dead. Died 2 years ago. But yes, I know the collection. My father dealt with him occasionally. There was a pause. L.W. Lawrence Winthrop. And the numbers? 723. July 1823? No, that's too late. It would have been after the accusation started. Alara pulled out her sketchbook, stared at her copy of the notation. What if it's not a date? What if it's a reference number? Archives use classification systems. Volume 7, Item 23, Adrian finished. Documents are often filed that way. If your father hid something in Lockwood's archive, it would still be there. Lockwood is dead, but the collection was donated to the British Museum. It's all still intact. They were both silent, the implication sinking in. We have to get out of here, Alara said. Tonight, before your mother realizes what we've figured out. The windows are watched, the doors are locked, and even if we got out, the museum doesn't open until morning. Then we break in. Are you insane? Probably, but I'm also right. Adrian, that archive is our only chance. If my father hid proof there, proof of where the Caravaggio came from, who sold it, what your mother did, then we can expose her. But only if we get to it first. There was a long silence. Then, the connecting door. Can you pick the lock? Alara pulled a hairpin from her hair, bent it carefully. I can try. It took 20 minutes of careful work before the lock clicked. The door swung open, and Adrian stood there, already changed into darker clothes, black trousers, a simple shirt, no jacket. How did you... There's a servant's passage behind the wardrobe, leads down to the kitchen. He held out similar clothes for her, too large, probably borrowed from a footman. We need to move fast. Harrison will check on us within the hour. Alara changed quickly, not caring about modesty. They were past that now, past propriety and scandal and everything that had seemed so important at the exhibition. The servant's passage was narrow, dark, smelling of old stone and cooking grease. They moved silently, Adrian leading the way with the confidence of someone who'd explored every corner of his house as a child. They emerged in the kitchen, empty at this hour, banked fires casting shadows on copper pots. Adrian grabbed bread, cheese, wrapped it in cloth. In case we're gone longer than expected, he said. They found Marcus in a small parlor, guarded by 2 men who'd clearly been told to be polite but firm. One was dozing. The other looked up when they approached. Your Grace? I thought Her Grace said, Change of plans, Adrian said smoothly. We're taking Mr. Webb with us. My mother's orders. The guard hesitated. I should confirm with Her Grace. Do you really want to wake her at this hour? Over a guest departure? Adrian's tone carried just enough aristocratic disdain. By all means. But when she's furious at being disturbed for something trivial, I'll be sure to mention it was your idea. The guard wavered. Adrian pressed the advantage. The young man isn't a prisoner. He's free to leave whenever he wishes. We're simply offering him transportation home. Unless you're suggesting my mother issued orders to detain innocent visitors against their will, that would be quite serious. Put that way, the guard had no choice. He stepped aside. Marcus looked between them, confused but smart enough to stay quiet until they were clear of the house. They took the servants' exit, slipped through the gardens to a side gate Adrian had used for secret excursions as a teenager. Beyond it, the streets were dark, fog rolling in from the Thames. Someone want to explain what the hell is going on? Marcus demanded once they were several blocks away. We're breaking into the British Museum, Alara said. Of course we are. Why wouldn't we be? He ran a hand through his hair. Ellie, I was locked in that parlor for 3 hours. 3 hours with guards watching me like I might steal the silverware. What happened? Lady Catherine admitted she destroyed my father. More or less. And she's hiding evidence that could prove it. Evidence we need to get before she destroys it. So naturally, we're committing a felony. Marcus looked at Adrian. Your Grace, with all due respect, are you sure about this? Breaking into the British Museum? That's not just scandal, that's prison. I'm aware, Adrian said, which is why you should go home. This isn't your fight. Like hell it isn't. Ellie's my friend. Where she goes, I go. Marcus fell into step beside them. Besides, someone needs to be the voice of reason when you two inevitably do something catastrophically stupid. Despite everything, Elara smiled. They reached the British Museum just after midnight. The building loomed against the sky, classical columns making it look like a temple, which, in a way, it was. A temple to knowledge, history, the accumulated wisdom of centuries. And they were about to break into it. The archive entrance is on the north side, Adrian said. Lockwood's collection was kept separate from the main exhibits. Too valuable, too fragile. Only researchers with special permission can access it. So how do we get in? Marcus asked. Through the window. Adrian pointed to a second-floor window, partially hidden by ivy. It's always unlocked. The curator smokes there when he works late. I know because I've used it myself. Elara stared at him. You've broken into the British Museum before? Technically, I had permission to be in the building. I just extended my stay past official hours a few times. He shrugged. Research can't be confined to business hours. They climbed, Adrian first, then helping Elara up, then Marcus. The window opened silently, well-oiled hinges suggesting Adrian wasn't the only one who used this entrance. Inside the archive was a maze of shelves, filing cabinets, and carefully labeled boxes. The smell of old paper and leather filled the air. Volume 7, Elara whispered. Item 23. Where would it be? Adrian pulled out a directory, ran his finger down the listings. Lockwood organized by subject matter, then chronologically. Volume 7 would be here. Italian Art, Acquisitions, and Authentications, 1810 to 1825. They found the section, started searching. Marcus kept watch at the door while Elara and Adrian went through box after box of documents. Here, Adrian said finally. He pulled out a thin folder, marked with her father's distinctive handwriting. Item 23. Correspondence regarding Caravaggio attribution and provenance questions. Elara took the folder with shaking hands, opened it. Inside were letters, dozens of them. Her father's handwriting, responding to inquiries about various Caravaggio works. And there, near the bottom, a series of letters that made her heart stop. April 1822, she read aloud. From Edmund Vance to Lawrence Lockwood. I write to express my gravest concerns regarding a Caravaggio that has recently appeared on the London market. The painting, Judith beheading Holofernes, matches the description of a work stolen from the Marchese di Corelli's private collection in Naples, 1809. She kept reading, her voice getting steadier even as her hand shook. The seller, who approached me requesting authentication, became hostile when I questioned certain irregularities. The painting has been altered, deliberately aged, I believe, to disguise when the modifications were made. When I refused to authenticate it without further investigation, I was threatened. The seller made it clear that my reputation, and my life, would be forfeit if I pursued the matter. Who was the seller? Adrian demanded. Does he name them? Elara flipped to the next page. He says he doesn't have proof yet, but he lists suspects, people who had access to the Italian art market in 1809, people with the connections to pull off a theft and the sophistication to hide it. She looked up. Your mother isn't on the list. Then who? Lord Robert Ashford. The name hung in the air like a death sentence. No, Marcus said from the door. Not Lord Ashford, the man who runs the gallery, who exhibited your portrait. His father, Adrian said slowly. The old Lord Ashford. He dealt extensively in Italian art, traveled to Naples frequently in the early 1800s. His face had gone pale. He died in 1820, 2 years before all of this started. Elara kept reading, pieces falling into place. My father suspected the old Lord Ashford acquired the painting illegally, kept it hidden for years. But when he died, someone inherited it, someone who needed to sell it quietly, without raising questions. She looked at Adrian. Your mother bought it from the current Lord Ashford, the son. Who's the same man who gave you space in his gallery? Marcus said. Who helped make your portrait of the Duke public? Who's been watching this whole situation from the beginning? The implications crashed over them like a wave. It's not just Lady Catherine, Alara said. It's Ashford, too. They're working together, have been from the start. And if my father threatened to expose them both, Adrian's voice trailed off. Then they both had motive to silence him. And mine. A sound from the corridor made them all freeze. Footsteps. Multiple people. Coming closer. Hide, Adrian hissed. They ducked behind a shelf, pressed themselves into shadows. The footsteps stopped outside the archive door. I'm telling you, I saw movement. A guard's voice, gruff and certain. The window's open, another voice confirmed. Someone's definitely been here. The door handle turned. Alara's hand found her knife. Beside her, Adrian tensed. Marcus looked terrified. The door opened. Lamplight spilled across the floor. And then a voice that made Alara's blood freeze. Search thoroughly. I want them found. All three of them. And I want those documents. Lord Ashford stepped into the archive, flanked by 4 men who definitely weren't museum guards. He looked directly at their hiding spot and smiled. You know, Lord Ashford said conversationally, breaking into the British Museum is quite serious. They hang people for less these days. Well, transportation to Australia at minimum. He gestured to his men. Please, come out. Let's have a civilized discussion. Alara's grip tightened on her knife. Beside her, Adrian was calculating distances, exit routes. Marcus looked ready to bolt. We can do this the easy way, Ashford continued, or we can do it the difficult way. The difficult way involves those documents being destroyed and you 3 disappearing into the Thames. The easy way involves a conversation. I'd prefer the conversation, frankly. Less mess. Adrian stepped out first, placing himself between Ashford and Alara. Lord Ashford, I should have known you'd be involved. Should you? How perceptive. Ashford's smile didn't reach his eyes. Your Grace, I've known you since you were a boy. Watched you grow up in your father's shadow. I rather liked your father, actually. Shame about what happened. You mean his murder? I mean his unfortunate death. Ashford pulled out a chair, sat like they were in his gallery, instead of surrounded by stolen documents in the middle of the night. Though I suppose from your perspective, the distinction hardly matters. Alara emerged from the shadows, the folder still clutched in her hands. You sold the Caravaggio to the Dowager Duchess. You knew it was stolen. You knew altering it and selling it would require destroying anyone who questioned it. Miss Vance, the artist who started all this trouble. Ashford studied her with the same intensity he'd shown her portrait. You're quite talented, you know. That painting of His Grace, deeply uncomfortable, but brilliant in its honesty. Pity you'll never paint again. Is that a threat? It's a statement of fact. After tonight, you'll either be dead or so thoroughly discredited that no one will ever take you seriously again. I haven't decided which yet. The letters prove everything, Adrian said. My father's correspondence with Edmund Vance, the theft from Naples. Your father's involvement, all of it. Do they? Ashford stood, moved closer. Let's see what you actually have there. Alara pulled the folder back. Stay away. Or what? You'll stab me with that little knife? In front of witnesses? He gestured to his men. These gentlemen work for me. They'll swear you attacked first. Self-defense is perfectly legal, even when it results in unfortunate deaths. You're admitting you plan to kill us, Marcus said, finding his voice. You're just saying it out loud. Why not? Who are you going to tell? Ashford's expression was almost amused. Your thieves caught breaking into a museum. Anything you say will be dismissed as desperate lies. And those documents, they'll burn beautifully. Old paper always does. There are copies, Alara lied. No, there aren't. Your father was too paranoid to make copies. Too afraid they'd be found. Ashford held out his hand. Give me the folder, Miss Vance. Make this easy on yourself. Alara's mind raced. They were trapped. 4 armed men blocking the only exit, no windows low enough to escape through, and documents that would burn in seconds if Ashford got his hands on them. But burning required fire, and fire required time. How did you know we'd be here? She asked, stalling. Lady Catherine sent word the moment you escaped Blackthorn House. She suspected you'd figured out the clue, so I came directly here. Ashford's smile widened. We've been quite good at anticipating your moves, Miss Vance. Every step you've taken, we've been 3 steps ahead. If you're so far ahead, Adrian said slowly, why haven't you destroyed the documents already? You've had years. Because we didn't know they existed until your artist friend started asking questions. Ashford's tone turned sharp. Edmund Vance never told us about his insurance policy. We only realized he'd hidden evidence when you started sniffing around the Caravaggio. By then we had to be careful. Couldn't just ransack the archives without drawing attention. So you waited, Alara said. Hoped we'd lead you to it. And you did. Thank you for that. He gestured impatiently. Now, the folder. Last chance. Alara looked at Adrian. In his eyes, she saw the same desperate calculation. They couldn't win through force, couldn't outrun armed men. Their only advantage was the evidence itself, and evidence could be weaponized. All right, she said, holding out the folder. Take it. Ellie? No, Marcus started. Take it, she repeated. But before you destroy it, you should know I've already read it, all of it. Every letter, every detail about the theft, the forgery, the murders. I can reproduce it from memory. Ashford hesitated. You're bluffing. Am I? I'm an artist, Lord Ashford. I have a very good visual memory. I could paint every page if I wanted to. Every word of my father's handwriting. She smiled. And I will. At the Royal Academy exhibition. A whole series. The truth about the Blackthorn Caravaggio. Think how people will talk. No one will believe you without proof. Won't they? After my portrait of His Grace caused such a scandal, after rumors are already flying about Lady Catherine's involvement? Alara stepped forward, still holding the folder just out of reach. You can kill me tonight. Burn these letters, but the damage is done. The questions are already being asked, and killing a duke and a well-known artist? That will only make people ask more questions. Adrian caught on. She's right. We've already told others what we found. My solicitor, Pemberton. Marcus's friends at the Royal College. If we disappear tonight, they'll know why. They'll go to the authorities, the newspapers. It was a desperate bluff built on half-truths, but Ashford's expression flickered with uncertainty. You're lying. Prove it, Alara challenged. Kill us and see what happens. See if you can silence everyone who knows. See if you can stop the scandal once it starts. She held his gaze. Or we can make a deal. What kind of deal? The truth comes out, but carefully, quietly. We control the narrative instead of letting it explode. She glanced at Adrian, hoping he'd follow her lead. His Grace returns the Caravaggio to its rightful owners in Naples. You and Lady Catherine admit the provenance was questionable, a mistake, not malice. You make restitution. Maybe lose some social standing, but you keep your freedom. Your lives. Ashford laughed. You're offering me mercy? How generous. I'm offering you survival. The alternative is watching your reputation burn while you sit in a cell waiting for trial. Alara's voice hardened. My father couldn't fight you because he was alone, but we're not alone. And we're not going to disappear quietly just because you threaten us. The archive fell silent. Ashford studied her, recalculating. His men shifted uneasily, probably wondering if they'd signed up for multiple murders versus a simple intimidation job. Let's say I believe you, Ashford said finally. Let's say there are copies, people who know, insurance policies you've set up. What exactly are you proposing? A confession. Written, witnessed, legally binding. Adrian stepped forward. You admit your father acquired the Caravaggio illegally, that you sold it to my mother knowing its provenance was false, that when Edmund Vance threatened to expose the fraud, you orchestrated his destruction. I did no such thing. You and Lady Catherine together then. I don't care which of you did what. I care that the record is corrected. Adrian's voice was cold. My father deserves to have the truth known. So does Edmund Vance. And if I refuse? Then we go to war. Public, messy, destructive. We publish everything. Force an investigation. Drag both our families through the scandal until someone ends up in prison. Adrian's jaw set. I'd rather avoid that, but I will do it if you force my hand. Ashford was quiet for a long moment. Then he turned to his men. Leave us. Wait outside. Sir, are you sure? I said leave. The men filed out reluctantly. The door closed behind them with a soft click. Ashford poured himself a drink from a flask, offered it to Adrian, who refused. You remind me of your father. Same stubborn honor, same belief that truth matters more than survival. He took a long swallow. It got him killed, you know. Adrian went very still. What? Your father. He figured it out. About 6 months before he died. Confronted Catherine privately, told her he was going to return the painting, expose the whole mess. Ashford's expression was almost sympathetic. She begged him not to, said it would destroy you, the scandal, the financial ruin, but he wouldn't listen. So you killed him, Ilara breathed. I didn't kill anyone. Catherine handled it. I don't know the details. Didn't want to know. He met Adrian's eyes. But yes, his stroke wasn't natural. Catherine couldn't let him destroy the family. You were just a boy. The title was new. The exposure would have ruined everything. The confession hung in the air like poison. Adrian's face had gone white. My mother murdered my father. She protected her family. There's a difference. Ashford set down his flask. She did what any mother would do when faced with impossible choices. And yes, Edmund Vance had to be silenced too. He wouldn't take money, wouldn't be intimidated. So Catherine made sure no one would believe him if he talked, made him look like the forger instead of the truth teller. And when that wasn't enough, when he kept investigating, then I visited him, had a conversation, explained that his continued health depended on his silence. Ashford's voice went flat. He took laudanum that night, whole bottle. The coroner said suicide. I let them believe it. Ilara felt sick. You drove him to it. I gave him a choice. He made his decision. Ashford looked at her almost gently. Your father was a brilliant man, Miss Vance, but brilliance without pragmatism is just martyrdom. He chose principle over survival. That's not my fault. It's murder, Marcus said from where he stood near the shelves. You're describing murder and calling it choice. I'm describing the world as it actually works, not as idealists wish it would. Ashford turned back to Adrian. Your mother loves you. Everything she did, the forgery, the cover-up, even killing your father, she did to protect you, to preserve your inheritance, your future. Can you really condemn her for that? Yes, Adrian said simply. I can, and I do. Then you're a fool. Ashford picked up his flask again. But you're also right about one thing. This can't stay hidden forever. Too many people know now. Too many loose ends. He thought for a moment. Here's my counteroffer, I confess. In writing. But Catherine doesn't. She's protected. You let her keep her reputation, her position. She's your mother, Adrian. Whatever she's done, she's still that. Absolutely not, Ilara said before Adrian could respond. She orchestrated everything. She murdered my father. She protected her child, Ashford interrupted. Something you'll understand if you ever have children of your own. The lengths a parent will go to. He shook his head. Catherine made terrible choices, but they came from love. Twisted, desperate love, but love nonetheless. Adrian was silent, his face unreadable. Your Grace, Ilara said urgently, you can't seriously be considering… My mother killed my father. Adrian's voice was hollow. She looked me in the eye for 5 years and lied, watched me grieve, watched me struggle with the title, and never told me the truth. Because telling you would have destroyed you, Ashford said. She chose your innocence over her own peace. That's not villainy, that's sacrifice. It's betrayal. It's complicated. Ashford spread his hands. Life is messy, Your Grace. Good people do terrible things for understandable reasons. Your mother is not a monster. She's a woman who made impossible choices in impossible circumstances. Ilara wanted to scream. He was twisting it, making murder sound like maternal devotion, making corruption sound like sacrifice. And worse, she could see Adrian wavering. Don't listen to him, she said. He's trying to manipulate you, trying to make you think protecting your mother is noble when it's just more cover-up, more lies. Is it? Adrian looked at her, and there was such pain in his eyes. My mother is guilty, we know that. But destroying her won't bring back my father, or yours. It'll just add more destruction to what's already been destroyed. So she gets away with it? She killed 2 people and she just walks free? No. She lives with what she's done. Every day, for the rest of her life. Adrian turned back to Ashford. Here's what's going to happen. You write your confession, full details signed and witnessed. The Caravaggio gets returned to Naples, quietly, through diplomatic channels. Both you and my mother make significant charitable donations. Art education, authentication training, something that actually helps prevent future forgeries. And Catherine's role? Remains private, between us. But she steps back from society. No more influence, no more power. She lives out her days quietly. Adrian's voice hardened. And if she ever threatens anyone again, if she even thinks about silencing another inconvenient truth, I release everything, destroy her completely. She knows I will. It wasn't justice, not really, but it was something. Ashford considered, then nodded slowly. I can work with that. Catherine will hate the restrictions, but she'll accept them. She's pragmatic, if nothing else. He pulled out paper and pen from a desk drawer. I'll write it now. You witness it. Then we're done. Not quite, Alara said. She still held the folder, still had leverage. My father's name gets cleared, publicly. The Times prints a retraction, acknowledges the accusations were false. That will raise questions. Then answer them vaguely. Say new evidence came to light. That Edmund Vance was unfairly maligned by unnamed parties with ulterior motives. She met Ashford's eyes. My father died thinking he'd failed, thinking history would remember him as a fraud. I won't let that stand. Ashford sighed, but nodded. Fine, I'll arrange it. The retraction will run within the week. He began writing. The scratch of pen on paper was the only sound in the archive. Alara watched his hand move across the page, forming words that would finally tell something close to the truth. One more thing, Adrian said as Ashford finished the first page. The painting itself. Before it's returned, we examine it properly. Bring in experts. Document exactly what was done to it, how it was altered. That information becomes public record. Why? Because other forgeries are out there. Other stolen works, other altered masterpieces. If we can show how this one was modified, we might help prevent future frauds. Adrian's expression was grim. My father's collection will be examined too, thoroughly. Any other questionable pieces will be handled the same way. Returned, documented, made right. That could take years, cost a fortune. Then it takes years. I don't care. Adrian's voice was steel. The Blackthorn name is going to mean something honest again, even if I have to dismantle everything my parents built to make it happen. Ashford wrote in silence for another 10 minutes. When he finished, he signed his name with a flourish, dated it, and slid the pages across to Adrian. There. My confession. The theft, the forgery, the threats against Edmund Vance, all of it. He met Adrian's eyes. I didn't kill anyone directly, but I'm complicit in their deaths. I acknowledge that. Adrian read carefully, then nodded to Alara. She read it too, checking every detail against what her father's letters had revealed. It was incomplete. It protected Lady Catherine more than Alara liked, but it was enough. Enough to clear her father's name, enough to start undoing the damage. I'll witness it, Marcus said suddenly. He'd been so quiet, Alara had almost forgotten he was there. As a neutral party, someone who has no stake in protecting either family. Thank you, Adrian said quietly. Marcus signed his name below Ashford's, added the date and location. Alara did the same. Then Adrian added his own signature, witness and victim both. It's done, Ashford said. He looked older suddenly, tired. Can I offer you all some advice, free of charge? I doubt we want it, Alara said. Take it anyway. The art world is corrupt, has been for centuries. What happened with the Caravaggio, it happens every day. Stolen works sold to wealthy collectors who don't ask questions. Forgeries authenticated by experts who look the other way for the right price. Authentication itself is sometimes just educated guessing dressed up as certainty. He stood, gathered his flask. You think exposing one fraud will change that? It won't. You'll just make enemies, powerful enemies who don't like their secrets threatened. Then they'll have to learn to live with disappointment, Adrian said. Ashford smiled sadly. Your father said something similar, right before he died. He moved toward the door, paused. Be careful, Your Grace. Righteousness has a way of making martyrs out of good men. He left. His footsteps echoed down the corridor, fading into silence. Elaris saw Adrian and Marcus stood in the archive, holding documents that had cost 4 lives and 5 years of secrets. We should go, Marcus said finally, before those guards come back. They left through the same window they'd entered, climbed down into the pre-dawn darkness. London was starting to wake, bakers lighting ovens, street sweepers beginning their rounds. Normal people doing normal work, unaware that the night had just shifted something fundamental in the city's hidden machinery of power and lies. They walked in silence until they reached Adrian's carriage, hidden 3 streets away. What happens now? Marcus asked. Now we make sure this doesn't get buried again, Adrian said. He helped Alara into the carriage, then Marcus. We take Ashford's confession to Pemberton, have him file it legally. Then we go public, carefully but publicly. Your mother will fight you, Alara warned. I know, but she's already lost. She just doesn't realize it yet. Adrian looked out the carriage window at the lightening sky. My father spent 5 years building a legacy on lies. I'm going to spend the rest of my life tearing it down and rebuilding something honest, even if it's smaller, even if it's harder. You'll lose everything, Marcus said. Your social position, your wealth. The scandal will touch all of it. Maybe. But I'll have something my father never did. Adrian met Alara's eyes. The truth. And people who helped me find it. The carriage rolled through empty streets toward Pemberton's offices. The city was gold and gray in the early light, beautiful in the way things are beautiful when you've survived something terrible. Alara pulled out her sketchbook, started making notes. Not for a painting, not yet. For something else. A documentation of everything they'd found, everything they'd learned. Evidence that would outlast memory, outlast the people who wanted it buried. What are you writing? Adrian asked. History. The real version. She looked up at him. My father couldn't finish his work, but I can finish it for him. Make sure what happened to him, to your father, it means something, changes something. It already has, Marcus said quietly. Changed us, at least. They reached Pemberton's building as dawn broke fully. The solicitor answered their knock himself, still in his dressing gown, shocked to see them. Your Grace, Miss Vance, what on earth? We need you to file these immediately, Adrian said, handing over Ashford's confession. And we need you to arrange a meeting with the board of the Royal Academy. Today, if possible. Today? That's impossible. I have appointments. Cancel them. This is more important. Adrian's voice carried absolute authority. We're going public with the Caravaggio fraud, but we're doing it our way. Controlled, legal. No more secrets. Pemberton read the confession, his face going pale. Lord Ashford signed this? He admitted everything. Or enough of everything. Adrian glanced at Alara. And Miss Vance is going to paint it, all of it, for the spring exhibition. Your Grace, the scandal is inevitable. We're just choosing how to release it. Adrian's expression softened slightly. My father died protecting lies. I'd rather live exposing them, even if it costs me everything. Pemberton was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. I'll make the arrangements. The Academy Board will meet with you this afternoon, and I'll file these documents immediately. He looked at Adrian with something like pride. Your father would be proud of you. The man he was before all this, I mean. The honest man. I hope so, Adrian said quietly. They left Pemberton's office as the city fully woke around them. Alara felt exhausted, terrified, and strangely lighter than she'd felt in years. I need to go home, Marcus said. Sleep for about 3 days, possibly never break into another museum. He hugged Alara tight. You're insane, both of you, but I'm glad I was here for this. Thank you, she said, for everything, for believing me when no one else did. Someone had to. He grinned tiredly. Besides, wait until I tell people I helped expose the art fraud of the century. I'll dine out on this story for years. He left them at the corner, heading toward his studio. Alara and Adrian stood in the morning light, suddenly alone. "I should take you home," Adrian said. "I don't want to go home yet." Alara looked at him. "Can we go back to Blackthorn House? To the painting? I want to see it again, really see it, now that I know the whole story." They rode in silence. The house was quiet when they arrived, servants moving through their morning routines, unaware that the world had shifted overnight. Adrian led her to the private gallery. The Caravaggio hung where it always had, beautiful and violent and wrong. Alara studied it with new eyes. Now she could see all of it, the alterations her father had spotted, the theft Ashford's father had committed, the lies Lady Catherine had built around it. Every brushstroke carried weight, history, blood. "It's still beautiful," she said softly, "even knowing what it cost." "Beauty and corruption aren't mutually exclusive," Adrian said. He stood beside her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. "My father taught me that, though I don't think he meant it as a confession. What will you do with it after it's returned to Naples? Document everything. Write a full provenance report, the real one. Publish it in every art journal that will take it." He turned to face her. "And I'm going to commission you to paint something to take its place. Here, in this room." "Me? Your Grace, after everything said—" "Adrian, please. We're past titles." He smiled slightly. "And yes, you. I want you to paint the truth. Not a portrait this time. Something about what happened. About forgery and theft and the cost of keeping secrets. Make people think before they buy their next masterpiece." Alara looked at the empty wall where the Caravaggio would soon not be, imagined her own work there, her own truth, bold and uncomfortable and honest. "I'll do it," she said, "but not for money. For my father. For yours. For everyone who was destroyed by this lie." "Done." Adrian held out his hand. "Partners?" She took it. "Partners." They stood there in the gallery, holding hands like children making a pact, while London woke fully outside and the scandal they'd unleashed began its slow burn through drawing rooms and parlors across the city. By noon, the whispers would start. By evening, the questions. By tomorrow, the demands for answers. And they'd be ready. With truth, with evidence, with a determination that wouldn't be silenced or bought or threatened into submission. The portrait Alara had painted, the one that had started all this, hung in Lord Ashford's gallery still. Unchanged. Unrepentant in its honesty. But soon it would have company. A whole exhibition of truth. Uncomfortable, necessary truth that would make people squirm in their seats and question every beautiful lie they'd ever believed. Alara couldn't wait to start painting. 3 weeks. That's how long Alara had to create the most important work of her life. She set up in the East Studio at Blackthorn House, the room with the best light, Adrian said, though she suspected he also wanted her close. Protected. His mother hadn't shown her face since the night they'd confronted Ashford, but her presence lingered like smoke, waiting, watching. Alara didn't care. She had work to do. The canvas she'd chosen was massive, 8 feet tall, 12 feet wide, large enough to dominate any room, impossible to ignore. She'd sketched the composition a dozen times, refining it until the image in her head matched what her hands could create. Not a portrait, not a single moment, a story. On the left side, she painted her father in his study, surrounded by paintings he was authenticating. Light fell across his face, honest, clear, unforgiving. In his hands, a magnifying glass. On the canvas before him, the beginning of doubt, the first recognition that something was wrong. In the center, the Caravaggio itself. But not as it hung in Adrian's gallery. She painted it mid-transformation, half the original work, half the alterations. Judith's sword raised, caught between truth and deception. The moment before violence, the moment before choice. On the right, she painted shadows. Faceless figures in expensive clothes, their hands reaching for the painting, reaching for power, for control, for the ability to shape truth into whatever served them best. And below it all, in smaller detail that viewers would have to lean close to see, the victims. Her father, slumped at his desk. Adrian's father, hand pressed to his chest. Nameless others who'd gotten in the way of wealth and secrets. It was brutal, uncomfortable. Exactly what it needed to be. You're making enemies, Marcus said, visiting on the 5th day. He studied the work in progress with a mixture of awe and terror. Every wealthy collector in London is going to hate you for this. Good. Alara mixed paint, a deep red, almost black. Blood or wine, depending on the light. Let them hate me, as long as they think twice before buying their next questionable masterpiece. And if they don't just hate you, if they try to stop you, then they try. She applied the color to Judith's sword, making it gleam. But this painting will exist. Once it's exhibited, once people see it, you can't unexpose the truth. It's out there forever. Marcus shook his head. You're either the bravest person I know or the most reckless. Can't I be both? He laughed despite himself. Yeah, I suppose you can. Adrian visited daily, usually in the afternoons when the light started to fade. He'd watch her work in silence, sometimes for hours. She found his presence comforting rather than intrusive, like having a witness to something important. On the 10th day, he brought news. The Times printed the retraction, he said, handing her the newspaper. Front page of the arts section. Alara set down her brush with shaking hands, read the headline, Edmund Vance, A Reputation Reconsidered. The article was carefully worded, admitting that new evidence suggested Vance had been unfairly maligned, that accusations of forgery appeared to be false, that his professional reputation deserved reconsideration. It didn't name who'd made the false accusations or why, but it cleared his name, officially, publicly. My father would have hated the passive voice, Alara said, her throat tight. He always said it was a coward's grammar, using mistakes were made instead of we made mistakes. But he'd be proud of you, for fighting when he couldn't. Adrian stood beside her, looking at the painting, for finishing what he started. Did he start it, or did your father? She glanced at him. The letters suggest they were working together, trying to expose the theft together. I know. Pemberton found more correspondence. Turns out my father wasn't just a victim. He was actively investigating the Caravaggio's true origin, planning to return it. Adrian's voice went quiet. He and Edmund were going to go public together, present a united front, a duke and a respected expert, too important to silence. But your mother stopped them. Yes. He didn't elaborate. Didn't need to. Alara returned to the retraction, reading it again. Her father's name printed in respectable newsprint instead of scandal sheets. The acknowledgement that he'd been right all along. It wasn't enough. Could never be enough. But it was something. Thank you, she said, for making this happen. I didn't make it happen. You did, by being too stubborn to let the truth die. Adrian smiled slightly. Ashford complained about the retraction, by the way. Said it would raise questions. Let it raise questions. Questions are good. He also asked if we were really going through with the exhibition. Suggested we might reconsider, for everyone's sake. And what did you tell him? That the painting would be unveiled at the Royal Academy Spring Exhibition as planned, with full documentation, and that he should probably stay home that night unless he wants to answer those questions in person. Alara laughed. It felt good to laugh, like breaking through ice into air. The work continued. 16-hour days, hands cramping, eyes burning from focusing so intently. She painted through exhaustion, through doubt, through moments when the enormity of what she was attempting made her want to hide under the covers and pretend none of this was happening. But she didn't hide. She painted. On the 15th day, Lady Catherine finally made an appearance. Alara was alone in the studio, working on the shadowy figures in the background, when the door opened without knocking. The Dowager Duchess stood in the doorway like an avenging angel, or a demon. Alara couldn't quite tell which. So this is what you've been creating, Lady Catherine said. She moved closer, studying the canvas with a dealer's eye. Quite dramatic, heavy-handed, perhaps, but effective. Your Grace, Alara kept her brush steady, refused to be intimidated. I wasn't expecting visitors. Clearly, you've made yourself quite comfortable in my home. Lady Catherine's gaze swept the studio, paint-stained cloths, scattered brushes, the organized chaos of creation. Using my son's resources, his protection. He offered both freely. Did he? Or did you manipulate a grieving man into believing you're some kind of truth-seeking martyr? The dowager moved to stand directly in Alara's line of sight, forcing her to stop painting. You've destroyed my relationship with my son, turned him against me. For what? Revenge? Justice. There's no difference, not really. Both just mean making yourself feel better by hurting others. Lady Catherine's smile was sharp. You think exposing me makes you noble? You're just another person using pain as currency. Alara set down her brush, met the dowager's eyes. I'm exposing the truth. What you did to my father, to your husband, the lies you built your life on. The lies that protected my family, that kept my son safe, that preserved everything his father built. Lady Catherine's voice rose slightly. You have no children, Miss Vance. You can't possibly understand what a mother will do to protect her child. My father understood. He had a child. He died protecting me from your threats. He died because he was stubborn and stupid and couldn't accept that some battles can't be won. The dowager's composure cracked. I offered him money, position, everything he'd lost. All he had to do was stay silent, but no. His precious integrity was more important than his daughter's future. So yes, I destroyed him, and I'd do it again. The confession hung between them, raw and terrible. You're admitting it, Alara said. You're admitting you killed him. I'm admitting I prioritized my family over yours. That's not murder, that's survival. Lady Catherine's hands shook slightly. The world is cruel, Miss Vance, especially to women. We don't get to succeed on merit alone. We have to be ruthless, calculating. We have to make choices that men never have to make because they start with power we have to claw for. So you became a monster. I became a survivor. There's a difference. The dowager looked at the painting again. This work, it's good. Better than I expected. You have real talent. Thank you for the backhanded compliment. It's not backhanded. It's honest. You could have a real career, success, recognition, everything your father wanted for you. Lady Catherine's expression shifted. I can make that happen. Even now. Even after everything. I still have connections, influence. I could ensure every gallery in Europe wants your work. Alara stared at her. You're trying to bribe me. After admitting you destroyed my father, you're trying to bribe me. I'm trying to offer you a future. This painting, this crusade, it'll make you notorious, not successful. Collectors don't want art that makes them uncomfortable. They want beauty that confirms their worldview. If you insist on exhibiting this, you'll be unmarketable, toxic. Then I'll be toxic. Don't be stupid. Think practically. Lady Catherine stepped closer. Your father died for principle. Look where it got him, dead and disgraced, with a daughter living in poverty. Is that what you want? I want the truth told, whatever it costs. Even if it costs you everything? Yes. They stood in silence, two women on opposite sides of an unbridgeable divide. You're just like him, Lady Catherine said finally. Edmund, stubborn, idealistic, too foolish to know when you're beaten. She moved towards the door, paused. I won't stop you. Not directly. Adrian has made it clear that if I interfere, he'll release everything. Ashford's confession, the letters, all of it. So you'll have your exhibition, your moment of truth. But once it's done, once the scandal dies down, you'll realize what you've sacrificed, the career you could have had, the life you could have built. And you'll understand that I was right, that survival matters more than principle. Lady Catherine's smile was sad. I almost hope I'm wrong, but I know I'm not. She left, closing the door softly behind her. Alara stood alone in the studio, surrounded by paint and canvas and the truth she was trying to capture. Her hands were shaking, not from fear, from rage, from the terrible recognition that Lady Catherine might be right about the cost, but she'd be wrong about the choice. The exhibition opening was set for April 12th, the Royal Academy's spring show, the most prestigious art event of the London season. Every collector, critic, and artist who mattered would be there, and they'd all see Alara's painting. The Academy Board had fought the inclusion at first. Too controversial, they said, too inflammatory. But Adrian had leveraged every connection the Blackthorne family possessed, and Pemberton had made it clear that refusing the piece would raise questions about what the Academy was trying to hide. They'd agreed, reluctantly, nervously, giving Alara the largest wall in the main gallery, where no one could miss it. On the morning of the exhibition, Alara stood before her completed work, trying to see it as strangers would. The painting dominated the space, 8 feet of brutal honesty, rendered in colors that ranged from luminous gold to deep, dried blood red. Her father's face captured in the moment of discovery. The Caravaggio, split between truth and lies. The shadowy figures, their reaching hands now clearly holding money, threats, power. And at the bottom, barely visible unless you looked closely, a small figure. A young woman with a paintbrush standing before an easel, refusing to look away. "It's extraordinary," Marcus said beside her. He'd come early to help with the installation. "Terrifying, but extraordinary." "Think people will hate it?" "Absolutely. The wealthy ones especially." He grinned. "Which means it's perfect." Adrian arrived an hour before the doors opened. He wore formal evening dress, looking every inch the Duke. But his eyes, when he saw the painting, there was pride there. And pain. "You painted my father," he said quietly, gesturing to one of the shadowy figures. If you looked carefully, you could see the resemblance. Older, worn down, but recognizably the late Duke. "I painted the truth," Alara said. "He was a victim too. Blackmailed, trapped, killed for trying to do the right thing. People should know that." "My mother will hate you for it." "Your mother already hates me." "True." Adrian studied the painting for a long moment. "Thank you. For making him more than a cautionary tale. For showing he tried." He did more than try. He succeeded. Just not in time to save himself. Alara touched his arm lightly. "We're finishing what he started. Both our fathers. That has to mean something." The doors opened at 7. The crowd flooded in. Nobility rubbing shoulders with artists, critics with collectors, scandal seekers with genuine art lovers. Alara watched them move through the gallery, their reactions ranging from curiosity to shock to outrage. And then they reached her painting. The silence was immediate. Total. 100 conversations cutting off mid-word as people registered what they were seeing. Alara stood to the side, partially hidden behind a column, watching. Beside the painting, a placard explained the work. "The Cost of Silence, a documentation of art, theft, and murder," by Alara Vance. Commissioned by His Grace, the Duke of Blackthorn. Below that, in smaller text, a dedication. For Edmund Vance and Henry Blackthorn, who died seeking truth in a world built on lies. The crowd pressed closer. Someone gasped. Someone else swore. A woman in diamonds clutched her husband's arm, whispered urgently, and then the question started. "Is this about the Caravaggio scandal? They're saying the late Duke was murdered. Edmund Vance, wasn't he the forger?" "No, that was proven false. The Times printed a retraction." The voices built on each other, speculation breeding more speculation. Alara watched it spread like fire through dry grass. The truth finally consuming the lies that had protected it for so long. "Miss Vance?" She turned to find a man in critic's clothes, expensive but not showy, the uniform of someone who judged art for a living. "Yes?" "Thomas Hartwell, Art Journal. I'd like to ask you some questions about this work." "Of course." More critics appeared, then collectors, then people she didn't recognize, all demanding explanations, context, the story behind the story. Alara told them. Everything. The theft from Naples, the forgery, the blackmail, the murders. She showed them copies of her father's letters, Ashford's confession, the documentation she'd compiled, turned the painting from art into evidence, from metaphor into accusation. "But surely you're not suggesting Lady Catherine Blackthorn." "I'm not suggesting anything. I'm stating facts." Alara's voice carried across the gallery. "The Caravaggio in question has been returned to its rightful owners in Naples. Lord Ashford has confessed to his role in the fraud, and my father's name has been cleared of false accusations. The rest, the interpretation, the blame, the consequences, that's for you to decide. And the Duke? Where does he stand in all this? Ask him yourself." Alara gestured to where Adrian stood near the entrance, surrounded by his own crowd of questioners. He commissioned this work. He's the one who insisted the truth be told, whatever that cost his family. She watched understanding ripple through the crowd. A duke turning against his own mother, exposing his family's corruption. The scandal would be enormous, career-ending, dynasty-destroying, and Adrian stood there calmly, answering questions with the same unflinching honesty that had drawn Alara to him in the first place. Your Grace, is it true your mother was involved in forging the Caravaggio's provenance? The provenance was fraudulent. My mother facilitated the sale. The rest is documented in the materials available to anyone who wishes to examine them. And your father? The painting suggests he was murdered. My father died under circumstances that warrant further investigation. That's all I'm prepared to say publicly. The rest is a matter for the authorities. Will you be bringing charges against Lady Catherine? That's a private family matter, but I will say this, no one in my family will ever profit from fraud again. I'm implementing new authentication procedures for the entire Blackthorn collection. Any questionable pieces will be returned or sold, with proceeds going to art education and anti-forgery initiatives. It was brilliant. He was burning down his family's legacy and offering something better in its place. Redemption through radical honesty. The evening stretched on. More questions, more shock, more people pointing at the painting and whispering. Some left in disgust. Others stayed for hours, examining every detail. Alara found herself surrounded by other artists, younger ones mostly, who'd never had the connections or wealth to succeed in London's competitive art world. You actually did it, a woman said. She couldn't have been more than 20. You painted the truth and made them look at it. We can do that, Alara said. All of us. We don't have to paint what collectors want. We can paint what matters. And starve for it? Maybe. Probably. Alara smiled. But at least we'll starve honest. Near midnight, the crowd finally thinned. Critics had deadlines to meet, collectors had reputations to protect or salvage, scandal seekers had gossip to spread. The gallery emptied slowly, leaving behind the art and the people who'd created it. Alara stood before her painting one last time, exhausted and exhilarated and terrified of what came next. You did it, Adrian said, appearing at her shoulder. He looked as tired as she felt. You exposed everything, made them see. We did it, together. She turned to him. What happens now? To your family? To you? I don't know. My mother has already left London. Her lady's maid confirmed it this afternoon. Bath, probably. Or further. Somewhere she won't have to face the questions. His expression was complicated. I should hate her, after everything she did, but mostly I just feel sad. She chose fear over love, lies over trust, and now she has neither. Do you regret it? Exposing her? No, but I regret that it was necessary. He looked at the painting again. My father tried to do the right thing. It killed him. You tried to do the right thing. It nearly killed you. Why is it so hard? Why can't truth just win? Because lies are easier, more comfortable. They let people avoid hard questions. Alara moved closer to him, their shoulders touching. But truth lasts longer. Lies crumble eventually. Truth just is. They stood in silence, two people who'd risked everything for something as fragile and essential as honesty. What will you do now? Adrian asked. After tonight? Paint. Keep working. Keep telling the truth, even when it's uncomfortable. Alara smiled. And probably make more enemies. You'll need space, a proper studio, supplies. He paused. The East Studio at Blackthorn House. It's yours, for as long as you want it. Adrian, I can't. Yes, you can. The house is mine. My mother's gone. And I want... He stopped, choosing his words carefully. I want to build something different. A legacy based on truth instead of lies. Art that matters instead of art that decorates. And I can't do that alone. I need someone who sees what others miss, who refuses to look away when looking away would be easier. You're asking me to stay. I'm asking you to partner with me, really partner. We establish a foundation, art authentication, education, support for artists who can't afford the traditional patronage system. We use the Blackthorn name and resources for something that actually helps people. Alara stared at him. That's ambitious. You painted the corruption in the art world on an 8-foot canvas and made London's elite look at it. I don't want to hear about ambitious. He smiled. Will you do it? Will you stay? She thought about her tiny room above the bakery, the life of scraping by, of compromising her vision to earn enough for rent, the constant battle between making art and making rent. Then she thought about the studio full of light, about resources to create without restraint, about a partner who valued truth as much as she did. Yes, she said. I'll stay. Adrian's smile was genuine, reaching his eyes for the first time in weeks. Good, because I already had Pemberton draw up the papers. The foundation launches next month. You're listed as co-director. You assumed I'd agree? I hoped. There's a difference. He offered his arm. Come on, let's get out of here. Tomorrow the newspapers will tear us apart. Tonight, let's just exist, without scandal or secrets. They left the gallery together, walking through quiet streets toward Blackthorn House. London slept around them, unaware that something had shifted. The two people had taken the machinery of power and wealth and corruption and bent it, just slightly, toward something better. It wouldn't change everything. The art world would still be corrupt. Wealthy collectors would still buy questionable pieces, forgers would still ply their trade. But now there was a crack in the armor, a place where light got through. And maybe, eventually, that crack would widen. 3 months later, the foundation opened its doors. The Vance Blackthorn Institute for Art Authentication and Education, housed in a converted warehouse in Bloomsbury, light-filled studios for working artists, a laboratory for testing and authenticating works, a library of resources on forgery detection. And in the main hall, taking up an entire wall, Alara's painting. The cost of silence. Not hidden in a private collection, not destroyed to protect reputations, but displayed where anyone could see it. Students, collectors, artists, a permanent reminder that truth matters more than comfort. The official opening was attended by half of London, though notably not the wealthiest half. The nobles and collectors who'd been implicated, however tangentially, in the Caravaggio scandal stayed home, protected their dignity, pretended they'd never been interested anyway. But the artists came. The students, the critics who valued honesty over access, the people who'd been locked out of traditional patronage systems. Marcus gave a speech about Edmund Vance's legacy, about a man who'd valued integrity over survival and paid the ultimate price. Adrian spoke about his father, the good man who'd been trapped by circumstances, who'd tried to do right and died for it, about breaking cycles of corruption, about building something better. And Alara didn't give a speech. She painted. In the center of the hall, she'd set up an easel, blank canvas, fresh paint, and for 3 hours, while people milled around her, while critics took notes and students watched in awe, she created. Not a portrait. Not a documentation of scandal. Just art. Pure, honest, unapologetic art. A woman's face emerging from darkness. Not beautiful in the traditional sense, too strong-featured, too determined, but real, honest, refusing to hide. Her own face, she realized halfway through, not as she wished she looked, but as she actually was, flawed, tired, brave enough to keep painting anyway. When she finished, she stepped back and let people see. "What's it called?" someone asked. Alara cleaned her brush, considered. "The Truth Teller," she said finally, "or maybe just Survived." "Will you sell it?" "No, this one stays here. Reminder that we're still standing, still working, still refusing to be silenced." The crowd applauded. Alara bowed slightly, uncomfortable with the attention but grateful for the support. As the evening wound down, she found herself alone with the painting again, her self-portrait still wet in places, gleaming under gallery lights. "Your father would be proud," a voice said behind her. She turned to find Pemberton, the old solicitor, studying her work with a critical eye. "You think so?" "I know so. I knew Edmund for 20 years, watched him fight for truth even when it cost him everything. He'd be proud you finished the fight, and that you survived it. I had help." The The best fights do. Pemberton pulled an envelope from his coat. This is for you. I found it in Edmund's papers, the ones I'd kept sealed. It's dated the week before he died. Addressed to you. Elara took the envelope with shaking hands, her father's handwriting, familiar and painful. I'll leave you to read it, Pemberton said quietly. Take your time. She waited until she was alone, then opened the letter carefully. My dearest Elara, it began, if you're reading this, then I've failed to protect you the way a father should. I'm sorry for that. Sorry for the poverty, the scandal, the burden of a ruined name. But I'm not sorry for fighting, not sorry for choosing truth over comfort, because that's what art is, at its core. Truth that makes people uncomfortable. Beauty that forces them to see themselves clearly, without flattery or lies. You have that gift, my darling girl. I've seen it in your work since you were small. The way you see what others miss, the way you refuse to paint pretty lies just because someone asks you to. Don't lose that. No matter what happens to me, no matter how hard things get, don't lose your ability to see clearly and paint honestly. The world needs truth tellers, especially in art, especially now. I love you, I'm proud of you, and I know you'll do extraordinary things. Not because you're fearless, but because you're brave enough to keep painting even when you're terrified. Keep painting, Elara. Keep telling the truth. Keep making people uncomfortable. That's how we change the world. Your loving father, Edmund. Elara read it 3 times, tears streaming down her face. Then she folded it carefully, placed it in her pocket near her heart. I did it, Papa, she whispered to the empty gallery. I kept painting. I told the truth. And I survived. Outside, London hummed with evening traffic. Inside, the Institute glowed with light and purpose, a space built on honesty instead of lies, on truth instead of comfortable fiction. Adrian found her an hour later, still standing before her self-portrait. You should go home, get some rest. Tomorrow we start the real work, reviewing authentication requests, teaching classes, all of it. I am home, Elara said. She gestured to the gallery, the studio spaces beyond, the whole impossible dream they'd built from scandal and secrets. This is home. Truth is home. Then I suppose we both live here now. Adrian stood beside her, looking at the paintings that lined the walls. Her work, his family's collection, the honest pieces, at least, side by side. Past and future. Corruption and redemption. Do you think it'll work? She asked. The foundation? Can we actually change anything? I think we already have. We proved that secrets can be exposed, that power can be challenged, that truth matters more than comfort. He smiled. Whether we change the art world completely or just make it slightly more honest, either way, we've done something that matters, something our fathers would be proud of. Yes, that most of all. They stood together in the quiet gallery, surrounded by art that told uncomfortable truths. Outside, the world continued, corrupt and beautiful and complicated. But inside, they'd built something different, a small space where honesty mattered more than money, where talent mattered more than connections, where the truth was allowed to be ugly and important and worth fighting for. It wasn't perfect. Nothing ever was. The foundation would struggle financially. They'd make enemies among the wealthy collectors who preferred their art decorative rather than challenging. The scandal of the Caravaggio would follow them both for years. But they'd survived. They'd fought power and won. Not completely, not cleanly, but genuinely. They'd taken the system that destroyed their fathers and bent it toward something better. And tomorrow, they'd wake up and keep fighting, keep painting, keep telling truths that needed telling, because that's what artists did, what truth-tellers did, what survivors did. They kept painting, even when their hands shook, even when the world told them to stop, even when the cost was everything they had. They kept painting, and slowly, one uncomfortable truth at a time, they changed the world. Elara looked at her self-portrait one last time, the face emerging from darkness, strong and flawed and honest. Then she picked up her brush, pulled over a fresh canvas, and began to paint. There were more stories to tell, more truths to expose, more lies to challenge, and she had the rest of her life to paint them all.